The rise of a family of immortal cultivators. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 26, Leaving After Peace. That's right. Our Mulan sect was once merely a subordinate sect of Shangzong Valley. Shangzong Valley went to war with the Five Spirit sect, exploiting countless resources. We lost all our high-level cultivators, spirit stones, and magical treasures and elixirs. That's why we were dissatisfied and annihilated Shangzong Valley. We formed the Seven Sects Alliance to unite the local forces. Otherwise, we would have been caught in a strife, with the other forces in Yizhou taking over our territory, the disciple said. Wang nodded, and the two disciples produced another document. This is a document jointly drafted by all the major sects and families. Patriarch Wang, please take a look. If you have any objections, please let us know. Wang carefully read through it, and by the end, he had a general understanding of the agreement. First, the agreement only protected the various families, sects, and forces. Independent cultivators were not mentioned. Each family and force handled its own affairs. When two forces were involved, they were required to follow the rules and regulations. Of course, this only involved major matters. Minor conflicts or struggles between the two families wouldn't require this. It was simply a matter of legal principles and human relations. Wang, seeing no problem, dripped a drop of his blood essence into the document, formally joining the Seven Sects Alliance. Wang knew the document was a magical weapon upon touching it, so he dripped his blood essence into it as they had promised, creating a strong sense of blood alliance. Now that the major forces in the East are united, I believe peace will soon arrive in the East. The disciple bowed and stood up. Yes, I hope the chaos is only temporary. Peace is the outcome everyone desires, Wang casually remarked, then stood up to see him off. The two disciples paused for a moment, but clearly had no intention of leaving. What else do you two want? Wang was also taken aback. They had already left the document and dripped their blood essence, so what were these two people going to do? We do have one matter we need to discuss with Patriarch Wang. It's about the Five Spirit sect, one of them said. Isn't the Five Spirit sect gone? Wang asked. The main Five Spirit sect is indeed gone, but a smaller one has recently been established. Does Patriarch Wang know about this? The disciple asked. I don't know. Tell me more, Wang said. Those are the remaining disciples of the Five Spirit sect, most of whom are key cultivators. They came together to form the new Five Spirit sect. Speaking of two of them, Patriarch Wang has met them before, the disciple said. Yes, I have, Wang replied calmly, nodding. By now, Wang naturally knew who they were talking about. Last time, the Seven Sects Alliance hadn't been finalized yet, and they didn't have a mountain sect, so they came to the Wang family and had some unpleasantness with Patriarch Wang. But now, since Patriarch Wang has signed the Seven Sects Alliance document, I hope he will let go of the grudge and not cause trouble for them, the disciple said. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten. Don't worry, as long as they don't bother me, I definitely won't, Wang said. With Wang's approval, the two disciples took their leave. Wang truly didn't take them seriously. Wang he wouldn't leave until 2 months later. With a system in hand, Wang, a group of key cultivating cultivators, wasn't afraid of them. The two men left the mountain gate and soared onto their swords. I heard they say there were 2 foundation establishment cultivators in the Wang family. Why haven't they been seen today? One of the disciples asked. It has to be true, otherwise those 5 spirit sect members wouldn't be so frightened. When I first entered the mountain, I sensed a subtle aura stalking us. I think it must be those 2 foundation establishment cultivators, another disciple said. There are only a few of us left in the Wang family. I didn't expect there would be 2 more. They're probably fighting in the upper ranks, too busy to care for their clan, leaving the mountain gate in such dilapidated condition. After Wang Zimin and Wang Lin finished reading, Wang collected the document and placed it in his stored ring. With the Mulan sect now in charge, peace would prevail for a while, though it was unclear how long it would last. During this time, The Wang family could also flourish. Wang Zimin returned to the foot of the mountain, and Wang Lin left the mountain gate, clearly having listened to Wang De's words the previous night. Wang De then activated his system again and used all his contributions to upgrade his house. Wang Zuzi flew out from nowhere, accompanied by Zisuo, and the two landed together. "Are you preparing to leave?" Wang De asked. "How did you know?" Wang Zuzi asked. "Today, the Seven Sects Alliance recruited the Wang family, and I became aware of your presence." "I'm sure you heard us talking," Wang De replied. "Peace is now in the east, so those people won't cause trouble again. After all, I can't stay for long, and the Wang family's development is not something that can be achieved overnight. If I don't leave now, I will leave in the future," Wang Zuzi said. "You promised me you'd stay for 2 months." Wang De looked at him like a child who had been deceived. Zisuo, seeing Wang De's childish expression, said to Wang Zuzi beside him, "How about? To be honest, if it weren't for no other choice, I would have liked to stay a few more days, but now that peace is in the east, we have no choice but to leave." Wang Zuzi trailed off. "Why are you leaving now that peace has been declared?" Wang De asked, puzzled. "Because of me." "Don't ask me about anything else," Zisuo interrupted. "Alright, then, go," Wang De said coldly. "Today, as the head of the Wang family, I will write you, the expelled one, into the clan chronicles. If the Wang family is destroyed, you will be the greatest sinner. I wonder how you can live on like this?" Wang De sternly declared. "You." Wang Zuzi was instantly furious again. Wang De remained calm. The Wang family suffered, and only 3 of them remain, all at the 5th level of key training. Wang Zuzi, thanks to the family's kindness, was able to enter the foundation establishment stage, but he refused to repent, first angering the remnants of the 5 spirits, and then disregarding the family. Wang De was still trying to find a way to keep them for a few more days, otherwise, it would be too difficult. Although they possessed a system, it took time for them to develop. Without the 2 foundation establishment cultivators here, with just the 3 of them, any random cultivator with a higher level of cultivation could easily wipe them out. While the 7 Great Sects Alliance manages the affairs of various factions, that's because it's easier to manage. Each faction has its own mountain gate, regardless of size. Independent cultivators, on the other hand, live on the edge of a knife, precarious at every turn. Not every independent cultivator has the income and incense-making skills of fairies Huayao. Most independent cultivators lack income, cultivation resources, or a permanent place to practice. Even in a place like Fanfic Mountain, cave dwellings are often seized, a place where true strength matters. Consequently, disciples of clans and sects are far inferior to independent cultivators in terms of individual combat capabilities. Chapter 27: The Departure of the Foundation Establishment Monk. "If I want to leave, you can't stop me," Wang Zuzi said angrily. "If you want to leave, I'll naturally have you, but if you want to live with this reputation of being disloyal, unfilial, unkind, and unjust, then go," Wang De said. "How have I ever been disloyal, unfilial, unkind, or unjust?" Wang Zuzi said. "Abandoning parents and brothers, leaving your family behind, is unfilial. Abandoning your family in danger, putting it in mortal danger, is disloyalty." Before Wang De could finish, Wang Zuzi retorted. "You've already joined the 7 Sects Alliance, so where's the danger? You know full well that with our current strength, any random cultivator could slaughter us, and the 7 Sects Alliance doesn't care about random cultivators," Wang De said. Wang De sighed inwardly. The clan etiquette and moral values brought from this mortal world were sometimes quite useful. And Wang Zuzi, having returned to see his brother, was clearly not someone without a conscience. He must have attended a private school down the mountain as a child, and possessed a deep-seated sense of morality. Wang De's words suggested that even if Wang Zuzi was angry, he wouldn't react. He simply wanted them to stay a few more days. Zisuo, noticing Wang Zuzi's impending outburst, quickly stopped him, pulling out a magical weapon and tossing it to Wang De. "This is a magical weapon I've spent over a decade refining. It's called the 10,000 Caves. While it's not as powerful as the great formations protecting the clan or the clan, with the 3 of you manipulating it, it's no problem against ordinary cultivators. Even a high-level key training cultivator, even if we can't defeat them, we can still stop them. We'll have time to seek help from the Liu family later." Wang De took it with a smile. "Thank you very much. Then we can leave?" Zisuo asked. "Yes." Having received the treasure, Wang De naturally kept quiet. Why did you give him the 10,000 caves? They're yours. Wang Zuzi said. Stop talking. I advised you not to come back, but you still did. It shows you still have some of your clan's moral principles in your heart. I don't want to make you feel bad, Zisuo said. As the two exchanged these words, they stared at each other, their gazes filled with tenderness and affection. Wang De's previously good mood suddenly soured. What a dog food. Hey. After the two of them left, Wang De simply watched them go before beginning to study the treasure. Naturally, he didn't know what it was, so he went down to find Wang Zimin. Wang Zimin, of course, didn't know either, so Wang De went to the top of the mountain to test it out. Wang De channeled his spiritual energy into the 10,000 caves, and the 10,000 caves erupted like a demonic being. Countless black auras emerged from them, soon enveloping the entire mountain gate. Holding the 10,000 caves, Wang De had a clear view of the mountain gate. The black auras were surprisingly able to obey his commands, corroding trees and soil, and even weakening the cultivator's strength. Wang De only experimented with Wang Zimin and Wang Lin, and seeing the children frightened, he quickly withdrew. This thing was truly a treasure, worthy of a foundation establishment cultivator. With these 10,000 caves, even ordinary cultivators, combined, should have no difficulty mastering it. The children, upon witnessing this object, were instantly amazed, yet also somewhat frightened. Wang De and Wang Zimin comforted them, and they chatted intermittently. How are their progress now? Wang De asked. Cultivation isn't easy. In the past, even those with low-grade spiritual roots would have needed at least 3 months to absorb spiritual energy. However, the spiritual energy in this mountain is indeed much richer. Moreover, these 7 are surprisingly more intelligent than any other disciples I have accepted. Wang Ye sensed the spiritual energy the day before yesterday, and now her breathing is much faster than the others. I estimate it will take another month or so for spiritual energy to enter her body. It's still not fast enough, despite nearly tripling the speed, Wang De said. He naturally understood the reason for this tripling speed. It was the passive effect of the system, and cultivation speed was probably the most important factor. Comprehension was probably the second most important factor, as comprehension is the last thing to come. However, their previous cultivation had already accelerated considerably. The actual effect and function of the passive skill have been gradually reflected, but it is still not fast enough. The family needs to develop quickly, and at least a group of backbones must be formed first. Back to the mountain, Wang De began to study the system again. Family location, Kinjetropy Mountain Family Head, Wang De. Family size, Level 3, Level 4, Family level, bottom. Family members, 10. Family contribution, 1. Family reputation, 3198. The family level has returned to the bottom, and the spirit stones and resources that can be collected daily are gone. Wang De is not sad about this. Although the daily resources are good, they are too slow and the effect is not very obvious. It is just that the daily contribution will be less in the future. Wang De is a little sad. However, for some reason, the family reputation has increased a little. It is probably because of his joining the 7 Sects Alliance. However, the second level interface of the family reputation has not been unlocked yet. It is probably going to take a long time. While thinking, the sound of flying in the air came from outside, and Wang De naturally went out. He saw Wang Lin coming back, and there was a woman next to him. It was this Huayao fairy that Wang De had seen. Seeing the smiles on their faces, Wang De wondered if Wang Lin had finally confessed his love and was now back to discuss marriage. Master Wang. Zhu saluted, and Wang De returned the salute. He thought, after all, a free cultivator is a free cultivator. Our clan doesn't have a large formation, so they just flew in from the air on their swords. While they've learned some of the basics of our clan, they don't truly understand etiquette. After welcoming them, he went to the outer courtyard, which was unused. Having previously hosted the Mulin sect members, he would now host her as well. Wang Lin attentively took the spiritual tea left by the end, brewed it, and brought it to her, giving himself a cup and Wang De a cup. Zhu took a sip and felt refreshed. Good tea. Of course, this is the Zhao family's tea, so it's naturally different from the one sold outside, Wang Lin explained. He then stood up and took some fruits and vegetables. There were some left by the end, and there wasn't much left. Try this. It's hard to buy outside. This is a spiritual fruit grown by the Zhao family. Only the Zhao family can eat it. Wang sighed slightly when he saw Wang Lin like this. He thought that although he was a little fat, he also knew the ways of the world. He didn't expect him to be such a licker. I'm afraid it will all be in vain in the end. Why is the head of the Wang family sighing? Ziyu was thoughtful and naturally noticed Wang's slight sigh. I just remembered a pet beast I raised before, and I felt a little sad for a moment. Wang said. Did the clan leader also raise a pet beast? How come I didn't know? Wang Lin had a happy expression on his face and didn't notice Wang's words. Yes, before the catastrophe, there was a little dog. It was always the most loyal to me. Although it wasn't particularly good looking and its cultivation wasn't high, it was hard-working and obedient to me. It was loyal and protective, and even when I scolded and beat it, it wouldn't leave me alone, even kneeling down to lick my shoes. At the time, I didn't think it was good. I just fed it and took it for a walk all day, but didn't pay any other attention to it. I thought it was just an animal. Then, for some reason, it disappeared. Now that it's gone, I miss it, Wang said. So the clan leader used to have a pet. When I have some extra money, I'll buy you another one. Those low-level pets aren't expensive these days, Wang Lin said. Yes, it's easy to get pets, but they're never the same again, Wang sighed. That's right. Love is truly hard to let go, Wang Lin sighed. Unlike Wang Lin, fairies Hu Iao seemed to hear the mockery, but her expression didn't change. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Wang Zimin Senior Sister. Seeing that neither of them responded, Wang didn't say anything further. After some entertainment, Wang Lin wanted to take her further into the mountains, saying they wanted to explore. Wang followed suit. The mountains were so simple, naturally, there were no taboos or anything like that. Although the bamboo fairy was a wandering cultivator, she had offered them shelter at the time. Wang naturally considered her different from other wandering cultivators, though this was more due to Wang Lin. Love always leads to loss, making the onlooker seem so humble, and Wang Lin was right in the middle of it. Seeing the two of them leave, Wang went back to his room to practice alone. By the time Wang Lin returned, it was already quite late. Wang Lin called Wang and handed him a few pieces of Mingxiuxiang, saying they were from the bamboo fairy. Wang accepted them, having never expected this person to give him such a gift. It was truly generous, and of course, there was also the intention of making friends. With her family now in such dire straits, her gesture made Wang look at her with a higher regard. This thing sells for 100 spirit stones outside, and she gave him 3, totaling a whopping 300 spirit stones. She's quite generous. Even for the current Wang family, it's a considerable sum, let alone a casual cultivator. No wonder this casual cultivator, at such a young age, has reached the 7th level of key training. Wang estimated she possessed more spirit stones than the entire Wang family. Since Mingxiuxiang is so expensive, and I don't have much use for the 3 pieces she gave me, how about I go to Heiji tomorrow and sell them for spirit stones? Wang asked casually, playing with the pieces in his hand. Let's keep it. This is a thoughtful gesture from her. If you don't want to use it, just keep it as a souvenir, Wang Lin said. Okay. Wang put it into his storage ring and led Wang Lin back to the courtyard. Wang Lin. Women, sometimes you can't be too attentive. That's not good. You need to learn how to play hard to get, Wang said earnestly. How old are you? Have you ever been married, or even had a Taoist partner? Why are you still teaching me? Wang Lin retorted. If it were any other matter, Wang Lin wouldn't have spoken to Wang like this, but in this case, he was firstly panicked, and secondly, he knew Wang was just a child, naturally unwilling to be taught by him. Wang was choked and speechless, knowing that it was useless to speak now. Those involved are often confused, while those on the sidelines can see more clearly. A sleepless night, Wang practiced until dawn, only emerging from his room at noon. Wang Lin, however, remained in his room, practicing. Wang's cultivation level wasn't very high, and the fasting pills he ate were bland, so he went to the kitchen to make something to satisfy his cravings. After finishing, he saved an extra portion and brought it down the mountain to Wang Zimin. Wang Zimin was also working hard down there, which pleased Wang. Although Wang Zimin and Wang Lin had their own unique characteristics, they were truly dedicated to the family, even more so than the patriarch himself. After Wang Zimin finished his meal, he pulled out another invitation. It was from a disciple of the Mulan sect, stating that the Eastern faction had been consolidated and that they needed to gather to discuss some matters. Wang De accepted it, and Wang Zimin asked beside him, "Would you like me to accompany you the day after tomorrow?" "No, I don't know how long I'll be there this time, and I'm worried about Wang Lin being alone at the mountain gate," Wang De replied. After saying goodbye to Wang Zimin, Wang De flew out, arriving at the Liu residence soon. He descended from the mountain and reached the mountain gate before sending the Liu disciple inside to report. Last time, the Liu family didn't have a protective formation, so he went straight through. Unexpectedly, this time, they had one, so Wang De naturally didn't dare to trespass. Two disciples led Wang De to the mountain gate, where Liu Zixing personally came out to greet them. They entered the reception room. Wang De's words confirmed that Liu Zixing had also received the invitation, but he remained unconcerned. With the Seven Sects alliance now established, the eastern region was moving towards a united front. This time, it was likely just a matter of getting to know each other and clarifying some rules. Wang De was naturally relieved upon hearing this, and he also marveled at the generosity of the Mulan sect, and the other sects, too. The rules of the immortal cultivation world vary from place to place. Even in Yizhao alone, strategies vary from place to place, but most follow the same pattern as in the eastern region, one or two major factions, either sects or clans, while the rest serve as dependencies, paying tribute, and exploiting the enemy. There are also those where one superpower and many powerful factions counterbalance each other, while others are equally powerful. Wang De had only heard about these situations and hadn't delved into them in detail. "Don't worry too much. We've also sent people to the Mulan sect to gather information. Haven't your Wang family returned with 2 Foundation establishment disciples? A few days ago, I heard from several wives in the clan that having 2 such young Foundation establishment disciples to support them is far superior to our Liu family, which has more people but no Foundation establishment." Liu Zixing, seeing Wang De lost in thought, offered counsel. "No, those 2 were disciples expelled from the clan. They simply returned to visit and are now gone. I don't know where they are," Wang De said. Upon hearing this, Liu Zixing was at a loss for words. Wang De came back to his senses and asked some more questions. Liu Zixing answered all of them. After the 2 chatted, Wang De stood up to say goodbye. When he was outside the door, he was stopped by a middle-aged female cultivator. He originally thought it was a member of the Wang family. Knowing he was coming, he wanted to find him, but he didn't know that this person was his aunt. Wang De was invited to his cousin's house. He was treated to wine and food, and there were many compassionate words. Wang De couldn't refuse, so he chatted with him. Talking about his family's past, he was filled with emotion. Wang De didn't feel anything, but his cousin's sincerity was so sincere that even Wang De, an outsider, felt a little sad after hearing it. As the 2 chatted, it was already late. Wang De couldn't resist, so he stayed at Liu's house for one night and went back early the next morning. When Wang De returned to the mountain gate, it was already noon the next day. At the foot of the mountain, 7 children were practicing separately, but Wang Zimin and Wang Lin were nowhere to be seen. Wang De went up the mountain again and saw Wang Lin preparing to walk down the mountain. "Chief, please go up and take a look. Our Wang family has been bullied," Wang Lin said. "What happened?" Wang De asked in shock. "Chief, you will know when you go up. I still have to go down the mountain to look after those children." After Wang Lin finished speaking, Wang De flew up the mountain on his sword. Then he saw a woman sitting alone beside the spiritual spring, with a flying sword lying beside her. The woman was holding a light veil, brushing her face. She seemed to have tears on her face, and her face was sad, which made people feel pity. Wang De didn't know who it was, and then he saw Wang Zimin coming out of the house. When he saw Wang De was about to go forward, he quickly pulled him into the house. "Who is that outside?" Wang De asked. "It's my senior sister, Wang Zi," Wang Zimin replied. Before Wang De finished speaking, Wang Zimin knew what he was going to ask, so he continued to speak slowly. "My senior sister is from the mortal world. She is not very talented, her spiritual roots are not strong, and her cultivation is not very good. She was just born with a good-looking face, which made many young men in the clan miss her. Unfortunately, that year, The Five-Spirit sect was holding a conference, and Master took us to watch the excitement and see the gap between the disciples of those big sects and us. Unfortunately, at that conference, there was a man named Bokin who took a liking to my senior sister at first sight. Since then, he has lost his appetite and has no intention of practicing. He visits our Wang family all day long. The Bo family is a large family, not comparable to our Wang family, but it is not weaker than the Five-Spirit sect at that time. Chapter 29, Meeting at the Mulin Sex Mountain Gate. Bakin begged the Bo family, seeking marriage with the Wang family. As a direct descendant of the Bo family, Bakin naturally had members of the clan try advocate for him, and so he went to the Wang family. The eldest sister, intrigued, insisted on meeting him in person. So they met, but Bakin was handsome, his manners and speech reminiscent of a prominent family, and his cultivation was far superior to that of the other members of the clan. The eldest sister, originally from the mortal world, knew that cultivation was difficult, and she was unwilling to cause her family to provoke the Bo family because of her. Moreover, Bakin was of the highest caliber in terms of cultivation, appearance, and family background, so she agreed, and the marriage was arranged. However, despite being from a prominent family, Bakin turned out to be a heartless, philandering, and lecherous man. When the eldest sister arrived, she discovered that he had 17 concubines and had abandoned his legitimate wife in just 3 months. At home, the eldest sister's cultivation level wasn't high, and the Wang family wasn't prominent, so naturally, she faced various forms of marginalization. Although she married him, she suffered a great deal of injustice. However, at that time, the Wang family was considered well known within the Five-Spirits sect, and this was a formal marriage. So, the master went to the Bo family to argue, and Bakin behaved somewhat, and things went on like this. However, by then, the Five-Spirit sect was gone, and the Wang family had fallen on hard times. Bakin had long lost interest in the eldest sister, and he simply sent her home with a letter of divorce. Wang decided in his heart after hearing this. Although it is a world of cultivating immortals, they are all at a low level of cultivation, no different from the mortal world. The moral ethics and etiquette of the mortal world all exist. Immortals come from the mortal world, so which one of them did not grow up with these educations? Even if they reach a high level, they are no longer mortals, and the things engraved in their bones are still the same. Married and then kicked out, if they were in the mortal world, they would probably not have survived like this. The two came out, and Wang Zi saw Wangda, put away the veil, and quickly stood up and saluted. She put her hands in front of her, bent her waist 3 points, and bowed her head for a long time before she stood up. Wang sighed. He had seen the Liu family, the Zhao family, and several others who had returned to their parents' home a few days ago. Was there anyone who was so polite and respectful? It can be seen that they all learned it from the Bo family. Although the Bo family has a high level of cultivation, the feudal ethics are more than 10 times stricter. Wang responded. Now that our Wang family has fallen on hard times, we can't help you. You have to bear this humiliation for now. One day in the future, I will go to the Bo family to seek justice. Thank you, Patriarch. Wang Zi bowed again, feeling quite emotional. Although she was already married, her parents' family was her true refuge. After all, blood is thicker than water. Wang felt a little irritated during this ceremony. There's no need for these big family formalities in the future. Our Wang family doesn't have so many detailed rules. Wang Zi said no more, and Wang stepped forward. There's nothing to cry about this kind of thing. You should be glad that you've escaped from this sea of suffering. Wang Zi heard this and cried even harder. Wang Zimin tried to persuade her. Being divorced is a shameful thing in itself. Patriarch, please don't say it anymore. Wang ignored him and took a step forward to Wang Zi. If Bokin came back to pick you up, would you still be willing to go back? Wang Zi was stunned and nodded. Wang laughed, but he couldn't help feeling sad. Don't you think you have escaped from the sea of suffering? Why do you want to go back? After all, I am married, and I will naturally follow my husband's family for the rest of my life. If I think about these things, then I have no reputation and no chastity, right? Wang Zi nodded and said softly. Wang wanted to say, then why did you come back? You might as well take out your flying sword and die, and guard your reputation of chastity. But Wang never said it out loud. He knew that if he said it, she might really do it. He was no longer a time traveler with the thoughts of his previous life, but the head of the Wang family, the head of Wang Zi's mother's family. Wang Zimin was a bit pedantic and took family affairs very seriously, but this Wang Zi was even more so. However, Wang Da did not fight back, but did not say much. These ideas were deeply rooted and could not be shaken. It was because of this that he, a 13 or 14-year-old boy, was able to serve as the head of the Wang family. It was not because of his outstanding abilities. On the day when the family was in trouble, they did not know what abilities he had. It was just because he was the third son of the former head of the family. Although Wang Da was disgusted with this kind of thing in his heart, he was powerless to change it. He just used his own way to at least make the Wang family less disgusting to him. If you want to go back, you can do so in the future when the family has developed and has a solid foundation. Now, just practice well at the mountain gate, listen to the arrangements of the people, and do your best. After saying that, Wang Da left without looking back. From then on, with Wang Zi at the mountain gate, there was one more manpower. The three of them took turns to teach the children at the foot of the mountain, and the rest of the things were also built in a proper manner. However, that day, after Wang Da went back, he had a lot of thoughts in his mind. The next day, Wang Da went out alone and went to the mountain gate of Mulinzong. This matter had been agreed upon long ago, and Wang Da would naturally not be absent without reason. However, Wang Da went to the Liu family first. Liu Zixing brought 3 family members, 2 boys and 1 girl, whose cultivation was actually several points higher than his own. Seeing Wang Da coming alone, Liu Zixing didn't say anything, and flew west with him. Mulinzong was not too far from their mountain gate. They set out in the morning and arrived in the afternoon. The green mountains were covered with clouds and the lingering sound was lingering. The mountain gate of Mulinzong was not like the Wang family and the Liu family, which were connected by 2 or 3 peaks. Instead, it was a diffraction of a mountain range, like a long dragon, entwined underground. Several people flew down. In the distance, a few cranes cried, perched atop the treetops. Arriving at the mountain gate, they were struck by its extraordinary grandeur. This dragon gate was over 3 times larger than the Liu family's, and its carvings were filled with an alluring aura. An invisible curtain of light extended from the dragon gate, circling the mountain and stretching to the horizon. Beside the dragon gate, a massive unidentified stone, 3 people tall, was engraved with 3 characters, Mulinzong. Unidentified stone is a rare and unique stone found only in the outside world. For Earth-attributed cultivators, it is a natural aid, aiding in the cultivation of spiritual power and also useful for refining instruments and crafting high-quality magical weapons. Even a piece of unidentified stone the size of a fingernail is a rare and priceless find, even in the major markets. And this one, standing 3 people tall, beside the dragon gate, demonstrates its value. 2 rows of disciples stood at the entrance, all of uniform height and dressed in uniform Taoist robes. As Wang Da and Liu Zixing approached, Wang Da took a closer look. Each of these disciples, male and female, was exquisitely crafted. The female disciples were all exceptional in both appearance and temperament, while the male disciples all bore dignified brows and possessed an extraordinary bearing. Liu Zixing and Wang Da immediately felt ashamed of themselves. Looking at their cultivation levels, they saw that every disciple was above the 8th level of key training. Of the few of them, only 1 family member, brought by Liu Zixing, had reached the 9th level, the rest were far behind. Seeing Wang Da and Liu Zixing approach, both rows of disciples bowed and extended their hands in welcome. Honestly, Wang Da felt like a country bumpkin entering the city. They were what cultivating immortals was, we were merely cultivating at best. The 2 handed over their invitations, and the leading disciple bowed again. Welcome, both patriarchs, to our Mulin sect to discuss important matters. Then, a female disciple nearby stepped forward and saluted. The headmaster has already arranged accommodations. Please follow me, both family members and their children. Liu Zixing and Wang Da returned the greeting, and the group walked in. Please collect and recommend. Chapter 30, The Fate of the Mouth. Upon entering the mountain gate, the first thing that caught their eye was the Mulin sect's first peak. However, the female disciple didn't lead them up, instead following the path down the mountain to the second peak. Beneath this first peak lay a spiritual field, with stairs ascending. Disciples in the mountain were either walking or flying, casting spells to bring rain, or inspecting the spiritual rice. Looking up, they could see several bearded tiger beasts circling the mountain. Their roars resounded through the heavens and earth, shaking both Wang Da and Liu Zixing's hearts. The spiritual energy is overwhelming. "This truly is a blessed place," Wang De exclaimed. "You haven't been here before, have you? This isn't the original gate of the Mulan sect. It was rebuilt by seizing the gate of the Five Spirit sect," Liu Zixing whispered. "No wonder," Wang De replied. The leading female disciple, naturally overhearing the two men's whispers, stopped dead in her tracks. "Clan leaders, be careful." The strongest man behind Liu Zixing, the one with the highest cultivation level, quickly pushed Liu and Wang De behind him, placing himself in front of them. However, the female disciple, smiling, bowed and stepped forward. "The two clan leaders must not criticize our Mulan sect if the headmaster learns, I'm afraid." The female disciple's words were unfinished, but her meaning was clear. The Liu family warrior standing in front of Wang De and Liu Zixing was sweating profusely. As the female disciple spoke, he used the two clan leaders to block an invisible aura, disrupting his spiritual energy. Spiritual energy release. This is a foundation establishment technique. I didn't expect a 10th level key training disciple of the Mulan sect could pull it off. His hands weakened, and the Liu family warrior fell to one knee. His injuries were unnoticeable, but evident. Liu Zixing was terrified, his mind already in a state of confusion, clutching the other two Liu family members tightly by their clothes. Wang De, seeing this, hurried forward. "I originally thought the Mulan sect formed the Seven Sects Alliance for peaceful development and prosperity in the East, truly different from the Five Spirit sect in Upper Zhonggu. But seeing them today, I'm disappointed. It turns out the Mulan sect is nothing more than a bully." A smile crossed Wang De's face, and he stood before the Liu family's burly man, unfazed. The female disciple was merely frightened, and naturally, not wanting to tarnish the sect's hard-earned reputation, he quickly bowed and said, "I'm not bullying. Is it inappropriate for you two to discuss Mulan sect matters in our presence? Whether it's appropriate or not, it's not your place as an inner disciple to lecture us. We are a faction too. While not powerful, we are not to be humiliated at will. If your Mulan sect thinks their powerful cultivation gives them the right to trample upon other Eastern factions, then there's no need to feign such affection by inviting us here." With that, Wang De stepped back, turned, and, pulling Liu Zixing with him, walked out. The female disciple, upon seeing Wang De, immediately turned back, still unaware of the gravity of the situation. The sect had invited them to this event to consolidate its influence in the East and counter external threats. If she caused the representatives of these two small clans to leave, word would spread. And the Seven Sects Alliance's reputation within the East would undoubtedly be tarnished. "Two clan masters, please stay," the female disciple quickly leaped forward, blocking the path. "Why, you won't even let us leave? Are you trying to imitate those casual cultivators out there and kill and bury the bodies?" Wang De scoffed. They weren't the only ones on the road, either. There were also representatives from other clans and sects, and naturally, some spectators. The female disciple, realizing she was about to tarnish the sect's reputation, apologized profusely, begging the two men to leave with her and avoid further trouble. Wang De, upon hearing these apologies, knew to give them a way out. If he pressed too hard, it would be a disaster. After all, this was the Mulan sect, a powerful force capable of occupying the Five Spirit Sects Mountain Gate. The Liu and Wang families were nothing compared to the others. If they truly showed no respect, they would likely die without even knowing how. So, they gave the female disciple a way out and simply allowed her to take the Liu family man to treat his injuries. The onlookers naturally dispersed, and the incident was resolved. While the incident was resolved, the minor incident still made its way to the Mulan sect's higher-ups. While no consequences were incurred, the female disciple would likely face some punishment. Disciples dispatched by the Mulan sect to receive various forces were naturally carefully selected, their interpersonal skills impeccable, so their concern for the overall situation did not disappoint them too much. The Mulan sect is currently struggling, and reputation is paramount. While Mulan is the strongest in the East, it's not as powerful as the Shangzhuang Valley and Wuling sect. There are 6 other major sects in the East, as well as several large families like the Bo family. They can't rule the East like Shangzhuang Valley and Wuling sect once did. They can only appease and unite the Eastern forces. This is their most important goal, gradually establishing their position as the leader. As for ruling, that's a matter for later. Only by surviving can they capitalize on exploitation. The female disciple agreed to Wang De's request and helped the Liu family warrior to treatment. Wang De and his companions were met by 2 other disciples, who led them to the second peak. Liu Zixing, feeling somewhat ashamed of his rude words, had led to this incident, but also grateful to Wang for his tact in preventing further trouble. On the way, Liu Zixing was naturally worried about the Liu family warrior, but he didn't realize that this incident would actually forge a bond between them. The female disciple, dispatched by the Mulin sect to receive the various forces, naturally possessed stunning beauty, a remarkable temperament, and exceptional wisdom. Meanwhile, the Liu family warrior, brought out by Liu Zixing, was naturally gifted and possessed considerable social skills. Most importantly, he possessed both courage and strategy, as evidenced by his earlier actions in front of the two patriarchs. Despite the vast difference in status between the two, they nonetheless came into physical contact, with the female disciple personally assisting him as he sought treatment. Later, to preserve his reputation, the Mulin sect sent the female disciple to the Liu family to personally apologize, and a sudden, lingering romance blossomed between the two. Though they became Taoist companions, their hearts remained connected. Many years later, when the Wang family gained prominence in Yizhao, the Mulin sect was protected from annihilation by the Liu family's connection. Fate is all wonderful, but let's not dwell on it for now. Liu Zixing and Wang De walked all the way to the third peak before arriving at the Mulin sect's reception area. This mountain peak was empty, filled with rows of courtyards. Wang De and his companions lived in a courtyard nestled high up in the mountain. This courtyard was naturally different from Wang De's humble home. As soon as Wang De and his companions entered, they were greeted by a delicate fragrance. The walls of the house were constructed entirely of spiritual wood, and just the touch of it was refreshing. The furniture, curtains, and window coverings within were all extraordinary, but Wang De's limited knowledge prevented him from distinguishing them. These items were worth a considerable amount of spiritual stones. If I could take one or two away, I could. How could I possibly have such a thieving thought? This is a world of immortal heroes, stealing is out of the question. And this is the Mulin sect. Wang De was indifferent. Liu Zixing was a bit more understanding. While the items here were extraordinary, he had a general idea of what they were. Greetings, two clan leaders. The four of them toured the place for a moment before four women, lavishly dressed but of ordinary appearance, entered. Wang De and his companions hurriedly returned the greeting. What can I do for you? Liu Zixing asked. We are the maids of the Mulin sect, responsible for taking care of the two clan leaders, one of the four women said slowly. Liu Zixing nodded and sent them into the house to clean up. Wang De sighed, this abominable feudalism. Even the cultivation of immortality has to be like this. As evening fell, the various clans and small sects in eastern Yizhao had almost all arrived. The vast courtyard on the third peak was occupied by representatives of various clans and sects. The Liu family strongmen also returned with a female disciple. Naturally, the strongmen first informed Liu Zixing that he was safe. The female disciple spoke to Liu Zixing and Wang De for a few words before leaving. A little later, the female disciple returned and said that they should rest for a day before the head elders and the other 6 sect masters would appear tomorrow. After speaking to Liu Zixing and Wang De, she went back to the Liu family strongman, gave him medicine, and left after a long while. In the courtyard, 4 maids were busy running around. The other 2 Lius naturally went to take care of the strong man. Wang De and Liu Zixing went out to go for a walk. Unexpectedly, 2 maids followed them out. Liu Zixing and Wang De smiled at each other, knowing what they meant. They ignored them and walked straight out. Recommended, please save, recommend. Chapter 31. The situation in Yizhao. 2 people followed behind him, neither of them in the mood for private conversation as they left. Although the third mountain was magnificent, they only visited it for a short while before returning to practice in silence all night. By the end of the day, nearly all the small clans and sects in eastern Yizhao had arrived. At noon, everyone was invited to the 5th mountain. Atop that mountain, there was a square with seating and a banquet. This was quite unexpected for Wang De. It seemed that whether in the mortal world or the world of immortal cultivation, the principle of discussing matters at the dinner table was essential. Each person had a table, 3 small dishes, a serving of fruit, a pot of wine, and a teacup. A maid stood nearby, holding a pot of tea and a piece of cloth. Wang De had no intention of paying attention to the fruits and vegetables outside, which cost hundreds of spirit stones each, or the maid behind him. Instead, he looked around. This was his first time attending such a scene, so he naturally couldn't be distracted by these external things. There weren't actually that many people present, around 100 or so. The 40 or so tables below were occupied by small clans from various regions. While these clans might be called small, their strength varied widely. For example, the Wang family, while considered a powerful clan, was actually not even as strong as the average independent cultivator. There were also the Liu family, modest, small factions. There were also some clans with rich historical connections. Moving up, the 20 or so tables in the middle held the backbone of the eastern region, mostly sects, with few clans. Above that, the 10 or so tables held the top-tier factions of the central region, all renowned across the region. As for the 10 or so tables at the top, they were the 7 sects of the so-called 7 Sects Alliance. These were the only remaining 100 or so factions in the eastern region. Even when the 5 Spirit sect was in existence, the number was roughly the same. Although the Xianian sect later seized some of the eastern territory, the region itself also spawned many smaller sects, so the number hasn't changed significantly. However, these over 100 forces are incomparable to the original 100. Although the Wang family wasn't particularly strong before, with 400 or 500 cultivators, including 2 powerful cultivators in the foundation establishment stage, they were able to rank among the over 100 forces in the east. Considering the decline of the Wang family, even though they are considered a power, it's easy to imagine. Even the Mulin sect, originally a subordinate sect of Shangzhuang Valley, paying tribute annually and submitting to the rule, is now the largest force in the east, demonstrating its strength. After a while, a man dressed in elegant white Confucian robes descended from the sky and landed in the center of the square. Is this the head of the Mulin sect? Wang asked curiously to Liu Zixing, who was sitting at a nearby table. Well, despite its youth, it's actually over 100 years old, Liu Zixing said. The man in white came up and introduced himself. I am Bai Zio, the current head of the Mulin sect. I am grateful for your kindness and invitation to discuss important matters with you all. He wore a long white robe and raised his hand, displaying the demeanor of a great man. Representatives from all sides stood and bowed in return. Bai Zio then took a seat in the center, and everyone followed suit. They then began to discuss the 7 Sects Alliance. Much of their talk was familiar, including harsh criticisms of the former head of the Upper Zhonggu Valley and the 5 Spirit sect. They spoke of the difficult struggles that led to the formation of the 7 Sects Alliance, the struggle for peace in the East, for the protection of the weak, and for shared development and prosperity. Wang listened carefully and found his words quite insightful. The policies of the 7 Sects Alliance, regardless of their motives, were highly beneficial to all the smaller factions. Consequently, everyone applauded. Wang smiled inwardly. After so long of exploitation and tribute, they had become numb. Instead, they were grateful for their peacemaking strategy. Only the larger families and factions expressed some criticism, their expressions clearly unpleasant. Clearly, these factions are focused solely on immediate gains, not the future. Given the current situation in the East, they're still preoccupied with cultivation resources. They possess meager cultivation skills but lack vision and wisdom. As expected, after Bai Zio finished explaining what they knew, he began to discuss matters unknown to smaller factions. One of these was the broader context of Yizhao. The Yizhao provincial government, as the governing authority of Yizhao, naturally had cultivators assigned from above. It was considered a regional power, and one of the most powerful in the entire state. However, the policies implemented by the various provincial governments throughout the kingdom were dictated by the kingdom itself, specifically regarding mortals, not cultivators. While the officials in these provincial governments were powerful cultivators, it wasn't that they didn't want to manage these cultivators, but rather the cultivators were difficult to control. Furthermore, several major sects within the kingdom were even more powerful than the kingdom itself, making them beyond their reach. Therefore, their most important policy was that cultivators were forbidden from harming mortals without cause. While this was stated, it was merely a constraint. Actual management was less specific. Unless a large-scale massacre of mortals occurred, they generally stayed out of the picture. Hence, the conflict between the 5 Spirit sect and Shangzhuanggu in the east, because there's no one to manage it. Yizhao is divided into 8 regions. The central region is home to the richest spiritual energy. It houses the provincial government and a super sect, the most powerful in Yizhao. Even the provincial government fears the 9 heavens' mysterious immortal palace, which is 7 times more powerful. This sect alone occupies the central region, devoid of other sects. As for clans, They are naturally the various clans within the Nine Heavens' mysterious immortal palace. However, despite their immense power, they don't manage the affairs of other regions. If you don't mess with the central region, they won't come out. After all, the spiritual energy in the central region is unmatched by other regions. The remaining regions are the East, West, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and the Linxon Islands. These 8 regions, originally independent, were once independent. When one power fell, another rose, each taking care of its own business. However, there were also conflicts within each region. The weakest region, the West, has now been almost completely divided between the Northwest and Southwest, leaving it in name only. After listening to Bai Xiao's introduction, Wang gained a general understanding of Yizhao. However, Bai Xiao's point was actually about the current situation in the eastern part of the country. The central provincial government wouldn't intervene, and the Jiushan Zuangxin Palace certainly wouldn't. The southeastern Xiannian sect's attempt to seize the eastern region was something they had to fight on their own. Another impassioned speech, one that got everyone's blood boiling. He primarily recounted the example of the western part of the country, which had been divided up by powerful families from the other 2 regions. The local forces, sects, and families had been wiped out, reduced to independent cultivators, their mountain gates occupied, and cultivators everywhere perished. Chapter 32 Upgrading the House. Wang understood the meaning of his words, and many others also understood the meaning of his words. The situation facing the East is obviously a bit dangerous. It seems that the Xiannian sect is not satisfied with just grabbing a little bit of land in the East, but wants to swallow up the East. However, the Xiannian sect obviously does not have the strength to do so, otherwise it would not have taken action until now. Bai Xiao's next words resolved everyone's doubts. It turned out that the Xiannian sect knew that it could not swallow up the East alone, and was now uniting with several other major sects in the Northeast to prepare to swallow up the East together. This was also one of the reasons why Mu Linzong urgently summoned everyone. There was a lot of discussion everywhere, but it was obvious that these small forces and small families could not reach any conclusions. I'm bringing this up to everyone's attention so they have a sense of security. With the 7 sects alliance now formed in the East, we're united. It won't be easy for them to conquer us. But if war does break out, I hope everyone will work together. Keeping secrets now will lead to destruction. When the nest is destroyed, the eggs will fall. Everyone, be aware of this. Look at what happened in the West. If we're not careful, we could suffer the same fate. Bai Xiao continued, and everyone fell silent. The East wasn't weak to begin with, but it was a pity that the 2 major sects were at war with each other, leading to this situation. Everyone lost interest in food and drink, and Wang felt a little relieved. It seemed the war hadn't even started yet, so he didn't have anything to worry about. Now that he had his own system, was he worried about not being able to develop? It was just a matter of time. If the war started a few years later, Wang was confident he could hold his own against them. After the banquet, everyone dispersed. The approximately 30 or 40 people at the 10 or so tables in the middle, invited by Bai Xiao, flew to the 6th peak. As for the remaining members of these smaller clans, they obviously had no chance to participate in the subsequent discussions. Afterward, another elder from the Mulin sect emerged and spoke, concluding the feast. The night's gloom illuminated the rockery and pond, and the feast unexpectedly stretched from noon to night. Wang and Liu Zixing were walking back together when they spotted a man, roughly Wang's age, practicing magic. A 13 or 14-year-old disciple from the Mulin sect has already reached the 7th level of key training. It truly puts us to shame. Liu Zixing quipped. Wang chuckled but didn't reply. For a sect like this, a force like this, recruiting a talented disciple wouldn't be difficult. Given enough time, Mulin would sooner or later become the next Shangzong Valley or the Five Spirits sect. The resources in the East were limited, and it could only develop into a force like the Five Spirit sect or Shangzong Valley, not the Jiushan Zuangxin Palace. This was due to the limitations of its region and marginalization. After another night, the next morning, the group of upper-class members had apparently not returned, but the members of the lower-class clans had all departed. Ultimately, these matters were the business of the upper class, and this invitation was merely a gesture of respect for these smaller clans. If war truly broke out, these smaller clans and sects would be mere cannon fodder, some not even worthy of such status. However, war between people isn't just about cultivation, strength, or resources. What matters most is the heart of the people. This is what the Mulan sect, or rather the Seven Sects Alliance, fears most. They themselves rose to power in this way, taking advantage of the battle between Shangzhuang Valley and the Five Spirit sect, which had ravaged Shangzhuang Valley, suffered casualties, injured high-ranking cultivators, and dispersed its ranks, to launch a rebellion and wipe out Shangzhuang Valley in one fell swoop. They feared becoming the next Shangzhuang Valley, or even the next Five Spirit sect. The human heart is unpredictable. So they're painting a big picture for these small sects and families, saying, look, we're great. We won't exploit you at all, and we don't have to pay tribute. We'll use our own resources for our own benefit, and we'll develop peacefully and everyone will be equal. This is a rule unprecedented in the East. This way, these small families won't rebel and ally with the Zionian sect. They'll only willingly serve as their cannon fodder, because they want to uphold this rule, the rule of peace and equality. Seeing them all withdraw, Wang De and Liu Zixing naturally left Mulan sect together and flew back. A few days after returning, Wang De used all the family contributions to upgrade his own house. Wang De, level 41, 4 contributions required to upgrade. The bonuses at level 41 are even more terrifying, and cultivation speed is already 7 or 8 times faster than at the initial level. However, even at this higher level, it's difficult to upgrade. Firstly, the contributions are insufficient. Even with Wang Zi joining, the daily contribution amount is still too low. Secondly, as the level increases, more contributions are required, but the actual results are clearly not proportional to the contributions. Wang De roughly estimated that the best results were achieved in the first 10 or so levels, when contributions were minimal, the level bonus was high, and the actual effect was very noticeable. At higher levels, especially after level 30, contributions increased several times, but the effect remained similar. Therefore, Wang De did some simple calculations and concluded that the subsequent contributions should be used to upgrade their houses for maximum value and effectiveness. After all, the clan is more than just one person's responsibility. Rather than wasting contributions on one person, it would be better to distribute them evenly, so that everyone's cultivation would be higher and the clan would be more secure. Alternatively, upgrades to training rooms and spiritual springs would achieve the best results. However, the contributions from upgrading these buildings, which house magical instruments or treasures, were not comparable to those from houses. Small spiritual spring, level 1, 50 contributions required to upgrade. House, Wang De, level 41, 4 contributions required to upgrade. House, Wang Zimin, level 1, 1 contribution required to upgrade. Here X9, Kitchen, Jian, level 1, 40 contributions required to upgrade. Spiritual Stone Condenser, level 1, 100 contributions required to upgrade. Courtyard, Unowned, level 1, 5 contributions required to upgrade. Courtyard, Wang Ziazan. Wang Zai, level 1, 5 contributions required to upgrade. Small 5-element Spirit Gathering Array, Wang De, level 1, 100 contributions required to upgrade. Houses are the cheapest, and Wang De doesn't have enough contributions to try to upgrade them. However, upgrading houses can speed up cultivation, and I believe that upgrading other buildings will definitely provide more practical bonuses. Ultimately, it's still due to lack of contributions, so Wang De can only take it step by step. By this time, Wang De's cultivation had clearly reached its peak due to the recent upgrades to his house. He was on the verge of breaking through the 3rd level of key training and heading towards the 4th. Therefore, he remained confined to his room, undergoing a period of retreat to improve his cultivation. Within a day, Wang De had broken through the 3rd level and successfully reached the 4th level. Wang Zimin and the others naturally came to congratulate him. The clan leader's ability to achieve 2 consecutive breakthroughs in such a short period of time was clearly astonishing. Wang Lin couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He was in his 20s and only at the 4th level of key training, while Wang De had already reached the 4th level at the age of 14. While the difference was due to their innate spiritual roots, there were also personal reasons. Chapter 33 The First Child with Spiritual Energy. Since Wang De had celebrated his birthday a few days ago, he was now 14. They were unaware of the changes to Wang De's house, so he took the opportunity to tell them he wanted to renovate it. After all, upgrading a building has obvious effects, but without an excuse, suspicion would spur them. So Wang De went out and found some tools, explaining that he would help them renovate their house over the next few days, adapting it to their individual 5 elements cultivation methods, allowing them to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Naturally, they had no idea that renovating their house could have such an effect. Wang explained that he had learned it from an ancient book, which related the 5 elements spiritual power to the layout of a house. After much explanation, the 3 of them clearly still didn't understand. Wang hadn't really intended to make them understand, he was just trying to explain the changes to their house. But after a few days, when Wang finished, they discovered that it was just as he'd said. While nothing had changed, their cultivation speed had increased significantly. Wang Zimin suspected Wang might have some hidden secret, but he kept quiet. With such a powerful clan leader, their clan would only prosper. Wang had saved up a considerable amount of contributions to complete the upgrade of the upper buildings, but he only managed to upgrade them to level 10, just as he had previously reasoned and practiced. Level 10 is a critical point, offering the most cost-effective bonuses. Going higher, the benefits weaken, and the cost-effectiveness declines. Wang's contributions were limited, so he could only upgrade all of their buildings to level 10, increasing their daily cultivation speed by 3 or 4 times before moving on to upgrade other buildings. Their level 10 buildings could offer nearly a 3 or 4-fold bonus to cultivation speed, but Wang's, already at level 41, only saw a 7 or 8-fold increase, clearly demonstrating the cost-effectiveness. The next step in his contributions would involve upgrading other buildings. However, upgrading structures like the Spirit Spring and the 5-element Spirit Gathering Array was prohibitively expensive. Even if the results might exceed Wang's expectations, he didn't dare invest tens or even hundreds of contributions to experiment. Perhaps waiting until he had more contributions would be crucial before considering these upgrades. Now that the buildings were upgraded, he was considering upgrading the courtyard below, where the 7 children practiced daily breathing exercises. The Wang family now wants to expand, and besides them, the only ones left are these children. They are the hope of the family. Speaking of hope is a pessimistic notion. Wang himself aspires to be immortal, to stand tall in Yizhao, and even the entire Chen kingdom. However, upgrading the courtyard won't be completed overnight. Daily contributions are enough to upgrade 1 or 2 levels, as upgrading the courtyard, starting from level 1, requires 5 contribution points. Wang Zi has been feeling better since Wang returned from Mulan sect, working alongside Wang Zimin and Wang Lin, freed from the heavy constraints of rules, has allowed him to relax somewhat. Over the course of a few days, Wang upgraded the courtyard below to level 7. Courtyard, Wang Ziazan. Wang Zi, level 7, upgrade requires 5 contribution points, still requires 5 contribution points. Based on Wang Da's experience upgrading houses, the contribution required for this upgrade should span 10 levels. Based on this speculation, other buildings might also span 10 levels. As for the cost effectiveness, it's likely to be 10 levels as well, but this remains uncertain, as the contribution required to upgrade each building varies greatly. This is especially true for buildings related to magical instruments and treasures, which are significantly more expensive than buildings related to natural spiritual energy, such as the Spirit Spring. Wang carefully experimented with the effects of upgrading the courtyard below, finding them somewhat similar to the house, yet also somewhat different. One issue was his cultivation speed. After reaching level 7, his cultivation speed only increased by about 2 times, not as significantly as the house. This might be because the courtyard not only contained the house but also had an open space outside. In this open space, the weeds had surprisingly grown rapidly and flourished since Wang's upgrade. This left Wang Zimin and the other 3 perplexed and speculating for a long time. Ultimately, however, their speculation led them to think of Wang Da, considering the recent changes in the house and the courtyard. They knew it, but no one spoke aloud. The family's progress was naturally a good thing, not a bad thing. Although the bonus to cultivation speed is not high, it does have some results. On this day, Wang Zimin came up to find Wang Da. It turned out that a child had successfully absorbed spiritual energy into his body, circulated it through the key meridians, and successfully entered the first level of key training. Wang Da hurried down. Being able to successfully absorb spiritual energy into the body is already considered a cultivator. This is the first step in the development and prosperity of the Wang family. Wang Da naturally wanted to go down and see this scene in person. As expected, it was the bold and hard-working Wang Ya, whose full name is Wang Zi and has a low-grade water spiritual root. At that time, Wang De felt that this little girl was bold and careful, dared to face authority, and was hard-working and smart. "Did you bring the exercises?" Wang De asked. "Yes, according to the rules, anyone who successfully enters the first level of key training can go up the mountain and find a master in the clan to become their disciple," Wang Zimin explained one by one. This was obvious. Wang Ye possessed low-grade water spiritual roots, and among the four, only Wang De possessed water spiritual roots. Naturally, Wang De was the best teacher. Of course, it wasn't that others couldn't teach them, but the limitations of their 5 elements made it more difficult for others to teach. Wang De had initially been reluctant to teach, as he only possessed a system, but his cultivation wasn't high, and he didn't know much about basic cultivation. In this respect, he wasn't as good as Wang Zimin. However, the family was still just starting out, and as the patriarch, taking on a disciple offered some motivation. Listening to them discuss their own affairs, Wang Ye felt somewhat reluctant. She had previously preferred Wang Zimin. Although he was the strictest of the 3, Wang Ye had that same personality, hard-working, intelligent, and courageous. She preferred the kind of person others feared. Because she wanted to become stronger, and she had a strong heart. Wang De's playful and cheerful nature clearly didn't suit her taste. Wang Lin, on the other hand, wasn't very responsible, and his teaching wasn't as good as Wang Zimin's. He didn't know much more than Wang Zimin. Later, when Wang Zi met her, she was clearly more knowledgeable than Wang Zimin during their teachings. Wang Zimin still had many questions for her, and her cultivation level was higher than Master Zimin's. Most importantly, she was a female cultivator. Wang Ye immediately forgot about Wang Zimin and fell in love with Wang Zi. In her opinion, the higher the cultivation level, the greater the ability. She didn't consider herself ordinary, so she naturally wanted to find a master with a higher cultivation level. Chapter 34 Wang Ye becomes a disciple. So Wang Ye stood up and wanted to speak. Wang De and the others were familiar with her personality. She was bold and had none of the shyness that a little girl should have. "I actually want to become Master Wang Zi. Look at me, a little girl, how can I talk to a bunch of grown men like you?" Wang Zimin and Wang Lin thought to themselves, and it was indeed true. After all, the 3 of them were men, which made it inconvenient to teach them. Wang De, however, laughed inwardly. He had already guessed what the little girl was thinking. Sure enough, after she finished speaking, she added, "And she has the highest cultivation among all the masters." This remark did not cause much commotion. After all, she was still a child. Little did they know that Wang De was only 14 years old, but her cultivation had already reached the 4th level of key training. She was a mid-grade spiritual root and a rare genius in the family. Wang Zimin and Wang Lin both possessed low-grade spiritual roots, destined to face bottlenecks in their future development and undoubtedly unable to surpass Wang De. Wang Zi also possessed low-grade spiritual roots. While she appeared to have the highest cultivation level, she was 3 years older than Wang Zimin and significantly older than Wang De, having only reached the 6th level of key training. Her cultivation speed was actually comparable to Wang Lin's. "This isn't up to you. Just follow our instructions," Wang Zimin rebuked. He knew Wang Zi's cultivation speed well. The 3 of them were ultimately at the same level, with Wang De being 1 level higher. Wang Ye, having been the first of the 7 to receive spiritual energy, was naturally the strongest. Regardless of talent or effort, following Wang De was undoubtedly the best option. Wang Ye immediately grew dissatisfied. He may be the clan leader, but he's young and his cultivation is low. At these words, Wang Zimin and Wang Lin's faces suddenly changed. Wang Zi even stepped forward, pulling her into his arms and hushing her. Wang De then stepped forward. "If you want to take Wang Zi as your master, then take her. After all, Sister Wang Zi has practiced for a long time and has more basic cultivation knowledge than us." But this. Wang Zimin knew the reason. It would certainly not be as good as Wang De taking her under him, but Wang De had already said it, so Wang Zimin couldn't say anything. "I don't have much time. I need to attend to various matters. I don't want to take in any disciples for the time being. Moreover, the matter of taking in disciples must be based on the children's own wishes." "This is my order," Wang De said to the 4 people. The 3 of them obeyed the order. They had witnessed the recent changes in the mountain gate and naturally knew that Wang De's life was not as easy as theirs, so they obeyed the order. Wang Zi also led Wang Ye up the mountain. The other children saw Wang Ye being taken away, and their envy and jealousy grew in their hearts. They turned it into a source of hard work and returned to their cultivation. Wang Lin had always been somewhat lazy within the clan, otherwise he wouldn't have reached only the 4th level of key training in his 20s. However, after the clan's calamity, he intensified his efforts. Coupled with the changes in cultivation speed across the clan, he was now poised to break through to the 5th level. So, he quietly retreated to his house to cultivate. Since returning, Wang Zi had also noticed a difference in the mountains. The spiritual energy in the house was surprisingly more abundant than when she'd been at the Bull family, and her own cultivation had even accelerated by more than a degree. However, she also knew the world of immortal cultivation was full of wonders, so she didn't dwell on it. Her mind focused solely on the affairs of her husband's family. However, she was inherently weak. Although her cultivation level was the highest among the 4, she was humble at heart. She simply followed the orders of Wang Da and Wang Zimin, never having her own opinions. Now, having taken in Wang Ye, she devoted herself to teaching her wholeheartedly. Years of living in the Bull family had naturally cultivated a fear of making mistakes. Fearing she wouldn't be able to teach Wang Ye well, she neglected her cultivation and devoted herself wholeheartedly. Although Wang Ye was bright, she was still young. She practiced diligently every day, striving to surpass those brats. And that Master Wang Da, only 7 or 8 years older than us, still called him master. His cultivation was only at the 4th level of key training. I'm already at the 1st level now, and sooner or later, I'll surpass him. Wang Da didn't know Wang Ye's thoughts, and neither did Wang Zimin. If they knew, they'd definitely teach her a lesson. You think it's so easy to advance from the 1st to the 4th level of key training? If it weren't for these changes within the clan, it would have taken months for someone with low-grade spiritual roots to gain spiritual energy. However, Wang Zimin was well aware of the severity of this situation. The changes in the clan's mountain gate brought about by Patriarch Wang Da were beyond his expectations, and this only deepened his trust and respect for Wang Da. Especially today, Wang Ye's spiritual energy entering her body was beyond his comprehension. Remember, that was only a low-grade spiritual root. To achieve this level of spiritual energy in such a short time for a low-grade spiritual root would probably cost tens of thousands of spirit stones. And no one would treat a low-grade spiritual root this way. The most important thing is that this is the change of the entire mountain gate, and the changes in the houses are really amazing. Could it be that the clan leader Wang Da picked up some treasure of the Dalao Jingxin? Wang Zimin guessed in his heart, but he also knew that since he was unwilling to say it, he could not force him. As long as it is good for the family, Wang Zimin will naturally be happy. Wang Da was studying his own system in the house at this time. Family location, Kingetropy Mountain Family Leader, Wang Da. Family size, Level 3, Level 4, Family Level, Low End. Family members, 11. Family contribution, 1. Family reputation, 3498. Although there are daily changes, they are not big. Today, Wang Ye's spiritual energy entered his body, making him feel that his system is amazing. In the future, he will definitely develop in terms of the number of people. With more people, he can unlock the 2nd level interface and increase the daily contribution. The size of the family will also increase, and the reputation will naturally rise. It is really 100 benefits without any harm. If there is a harm, it is difficult to manage. This is a problem, but with more people, there will definitely be people who can manage. Of the 4, Wang Zimin was the most suitable. He was meticulous, loyal to his family, and fearless. Wang Zi, on the other hand, was timid, afraid to show his respect, and only knew how to flatter. He possessed cultivation skills but no intimidating authority, and possessed knowledge but no confidence. Wang Lin, on the other hand, was somewhat selfish. It wasn't quite selfish. He would follow Wang Da and Wang Zimin's orders, but only within his responsibilities. He needed to be pushed forward, and while he had his own ideas, he lacked impartiality. Wang Da's current desire was to recruit people. He put people first, and personnel were the root of everything. But obviously, family. Family. Only a family could be called a family. Recruiting outsiders would be inappropriate. Furthermore, if outsiders were recruited, it would become a sect, and Wang Da feared that even the system wouldn't recognize him. Throughout history, countless families have risen and fallen, but very few have perished from internal strife. This is the advantage of a family, unity, and the use of blood to maintain ties. Unlike a sect, Shangzong Valley was rebelled against and destroyed just because it destroyed the Wuling sect and suffered some casualties. This is the disadvantage of a sect: it is not united enough, and in the process of preventing external enemies, it also has to consider internal conflicts. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35: Painstaking Recruitment. The family was clearly too small, and any new members would have to wait until next year, with an unknown number. There were many ways to recruit, such as finding a divorced woman like Wang Zi, but that was a rare opportunity. Only two methods were feasible: marriage. Wang De, Wang Lin, and Wang Zimin were three grown men. Marrying one would provide an additional member, a grown man with established cultivation. Furthermore, this wouldn't just bring in a child, the person marrying would at least be a member of the family, already cultivating within the family. This method was feasible, but Wang De pondered it carefully, considering each option. He was still young, and couldn't afford to arrange marriage so soon. Wang Lin, obsessed with the fairy Zuyu, was clearly not going to agree if Wang De approached him. He had previously urged him to expedite his pursuit of her, but Zuyu's visit that day made it clear that this was a difficult undertaking, and Wang Lin's personality made it difficult to succeed. This put Wang Lin in a difficult position. The only one left was Wang Zimin, who was old, so it would be just right for him to find a marriage. Wang De thought carefully and felt that the Liu family was not bad. He had been there several times and there were many unmarried female cultivators. Although they were not beautiful, they were all young and lovely. After all, they were also family members and had some upbringing and etiquette. Besides, there were also many daughters-in-law from the Wang family in the Liu family. Wang De went to talk to Liu Zixing and thought that it would not be a problem to arrange a blind date. The main thing was that there had to be someone who liked Wang Zimin. This was a matter between the two of them, and it was not something Wang De could control. Wang De thought so in his heart and went to find Wang Zimin. After hearing what Wang De said, Wang Zimin did not lecture Wang De like Wang Lin did, but smiled. "Didn't you tell me to marry the palace master of the Jiushan Zuixin Palace? Why are you thinking of arranging a marriage for me now?" Wang De heard it. "Isn't it because I see you're getting old? It's not good to be without a woman, so I'm thinking of arranging a marriage for you. As the clan leader, it's my duty." "That's fine, but I'm only interested in the palace master of the Nine Heavens' mysterious immortal palace. If you're capable, go and find me a marriage," Wang Zimin joked. He'd actually only met the palace master once, aloft on the podium. His extraordinary demeanor and profound cultivation had drawn him in. While he might have liked her, he wasn't completely in love. Firstly, his cultivation wasn't high, his family wasn't prominent, and secondly, the age difference was too great. Talking about this meeting brought back memories for Wang Zimin. He said this to encourage Wang De. He suspected Wang De had some secrets that could help the clan advance, so he was motivating him. While it wasn't convenient for him to ask him about his treasures, the Nine Heavens' mysterious immortal palace was the most powerful sect in Yizhao, and it was a good idea to continue in this direction. Wang De knew there was no hope for the near future when he heard him say this, but he spoke up anyway. "If you really want to marry her, it won't take long. When our family becomes stronger than the Jiushan Zuixin Palace, I will personally go and propose marriage for you." "That's great. I'll wait," Wang Zimin said and left. Wang De returned to the house. Now that the marriage plan had obviously failed, he could only consider other methods. Wang De suddenly thought of Qin Yi, whom he had met in Wang Zuzi village that day. Although he had 3 spiritual roots, he was only of a minor quality, but he could also practice. He had lived in Wangjia village for so long that he was not considered an outsider and could be recruited. Moreover, he was already old, and his cultivation would not be too high after joining the family, but he could still do some family chores, which was much better than herding cattle in the mountains. With a mentality of recruiting as many as he could, Wang De went to find Wang Zimin at the foot of the mountain and talked to him. Wang Zimin thought for a long time before speaking. If the clan leader wants to recruit someone from outside the family, he must find a formal way and have a reputation, such as adopting someone and changing their surname. He can't just bring them up the mountain. The clan has had such things before, such as adopting someone, marrying into the family, adopting abandoned babies, etc. I understand. Wang agreed and flew out of the mountain gate. In Titao village, on a small mountain path, Qin Yu was leading his 2 cows and humming a little tune. Wang landed directly, which actually scared him. Master Immortal, are you willing to practice? Wang asked directly. This. Qin Yu hesitated. I'm already 14. It's probably too late to start cultivating now, and my last name is Qin. It's certainly late, but you can still get started. With your 3-element spiritual roots and dual-phase spiritual roots, you're comparable to a lower-grade cultivator, so cultivation isn't impossible. Furthermore, cultivation is inherently a matter of going against the grain. Besides spiritual roots, there are other factors involved: comprehension, luck, and blessings. How do you know you won't become a high-level cultivator after starting? Furthermore, even if you lack good luck and only reach the key condensation stage and stop there, you're still what you call an immortal master. Doing some cultivation-related work within the clan is far better than herding cattle here, Wang said. What about my last name? Qin Yu asked. That's easy. You're 14 now. In the mortal world, you can get married at 15. I'll arrange a marriage for you, and you'll be considered a son-in-law of the Wang family. How do you think? Wang asked. Can I go back and ask my parents? Qin Yu asked. Okay, I'll take you. Wang soared onto his sword and pulled Qin Yu back to the village. The 2 cows behind him bleated incessantly, and Qin Yu called out. My cows, at least let me tie them up before you take me. That's easy. Wang turned, and a stream of water sank the ropes deep into the mud. Qin Yu's father was in the fields, so Wang flew over and pulled him up. He then found his mother, pulled her up too, and brought her back to the village. That's what happened. I've explained it clearly. What do you think? Wang recounted this story and asked. Father and Mother Qin exchanged a few glances, hesitated for a moment, and nodded. But how do we arrange the marriage? There's no rush. It's just a matter of reputation. If there's a woman in the clan who doesn't want to marry far away in the future, I'll arrange it for her, Wang said. That's great. My son can still have the surname Qin, Qin's mother interjected. Qin's father nodded. Wang took Qin Yu with him and returned to the mountain gate. He then explained to Wang Zimin that he always followed the rules, and that bringing him along like this was indeed inappropriate, but he couldn't argue with Wang, so he agreed. It was easier to get things done with fewer people, so the matter was settled, and Qin Yu joined the 6 children in their cultivation. Thank you. Qin Yu was, after all, a 14-year-old boy, and in that era, 14 was considered quite mature. Wang smiled, looking much more mature than him. The path of cultivation is incredibly difficult. Although you've begun cultivation, becoming a powerful cultivator requires a strong will, unwavering effort, and, of course, luck. Meeting you proves I'm quite lucky, right? Qin Yu smiled as well. Yes, that's what I mean. Wang smiled as well. After a few small talks, Wang headed up the mountain. Bringing Qin Yu into the mountain would only add one more person, and Wang had the idea of recruiting someone else, but he didn't have anyone suitable, so he had to wait until next year. Chapter 36 Basic Spells. On the mountain, Wang Zi was teaching Wang Ye the art of controlling objects, one of the 5 fundamental techniques. These 5 basic techniques are essential for cultivators at the first level of key training. These include the art of clairvoyance, the art of controlling objects, the art of divine movement, the art of divine vision, and the art of clear vision. These 5 basic techniques, common even in major sects, are the simplest and required of all spiritual roots. They are fundamental to the practice. Of course, this doesn't apply to independent cultivators. Most of them lack proper guidance upon entry. Some are simply born out of luck, perhaps finding a certain elixir that opens their spiritual cultivation, or picking up a dropped mental technique from a cultivator and cultivating with inherent spiritual roots. These individuals face a particularly difficult path in cultivation, requiring far more experience than other cultivators. However, it's these individuals who are more likely to defy fate and achieve extraordinary success. However, these individuals are the most likely to achieve extraordinary accomplishments, but these are only the top performers. The majority of independent cultivators are mediocre and unsuccessful. However, most independent cultivators at least have a master, otherwise, even with good luck, continued cultivation would be difficult. These 5 techniques can be said to be the root of all other techniques. Many powerful techniques evolved from them. For example, object control is the simplest and most basic technique. Sword control is more complex, also based on object control. Since most cultivators wield swords, sword control gradually evolved into the most basic technique, despite their shared origins. Wang possessed a mid-grade water element spiritual root and was previously the son of the patriarch, so he naturally had already learned these 5 basic techniques. In addition to these 5 basic techniques, there are also the 5 elements basic techniques. Wang's water elemental foundations are water control, fog, ice formation, and cloud and rain. These are the 4 basic water elements, and the rest of the water elements also largely evolved from these 4. Of course, Wang didn't learn only these techniques. Since water nourishes wood, and the Wang family wasn't particularly powerful, he also learned techniques for cultivating spiritual herbs, medicinal herbs, and fruits, such as rainfall techniques, temperature control techniques, and morning dew techniques. However, Wang wasn't currently practicing these cultivation techniques. Firstly, as the head of the Wang family, farming wasn't likely. His training was primarily due to his water spirit roots, and with 2 older brothers, the position of head was unlikely to reach him. Furthermore, cultivation provided a vital source of resources for the family's cultivation. As for combat techniques, Wang hadn't learned much, only a single ice cone technique, and its power was relatively weak. After all, the Wang family boasted a long and rich heritage, and possessed a comprehensive range of techniques, basic skills, and basic skills. As long as one possessed talent, one wouldn't stray from the path, which was one of the family's strengths. Wang had wanted to learn powerful combat techniques, but he had his own system. He had seen many powerful techniques in the second level of the family contribution system, but they were quite expensive. Wang had visited the Heiji market and the family's collection, but none of these techniques were available elsewhere. So, Wang simply waited and decided to learn them later. However, these techniques couldn't be exchanged for just a few contribution points, they required a significant amount. In short, everything exists, but contributions are required. This is where Wang struggled. Once the clan had a few hundred members and he could collect a few thousand contributions daily, he'd be all smiles. Wang pondered for a moment, then returned to his training. Outside, Wang continued to scold him, but the art of controlling objects wasn't something that could be mastered overnight. She persevered. After all, she'd outperformed the 6 children, so how difficult could controlling objects be? Even Wang Zi left to practice alone, while Wang continued outside. However, controlling objects wasn't so easy. When Wang woke up from a night of practice, Wang had fallen asleep outside. Wang Zi emerged and carried her back to her room. Wang Zimin had already reached the mountain without him noticing. Clan leader, the clan's elixirs and cultivation resources are being used up too much? Now Wang needs resources for daily cultivation. I see that with the 5 of us practicing, and the children's spiritual energy entering their bodies in a few days, these elixirs will only be enough for a little over a month of cultivation, Wang Zimin said. We can hold out for a month or more, so there's no rush, Wang replied. What I mean is, should we consider reopening the medicine garden and those spiritual fields down the mountain, planting spiritual rice? Wang Zimin explained one by one, recounting the family's previous businesses and sources of spiritual stones. If we open up the medicine garden, will you plant it? Then will we still need to cultivate? Who will cultivate those spiritual fields? Right now, we're short of people. With only a few people cultivating, I can still earn these resources. When there are more people, we'll naturally expand, but not now, Wang said. Wang Zimin listened, but naturally, he didn't say much. He was still focused on future sustainable development. As for the people who would cultivate spiritual fields, Wang Lin had previously cultivated spiritual fields. He was in charge of mortal affairs, so he naturally wouldn't be able to do it, and his spiritual roots wouldn't be suitable. A month is still a long way to go, considering it hasn't even been a month since the catastrophe. If all else fails, Wang could trade his contributions for some spiritual stones. The most important thing now is people. Only with people can we cultivate the spiritual herbs and spiritual fields, and only with people can we carry out the various affairs of the family. Only then will Wang's contribution increase. With this thought in mind, Wang retreated back to his room and began to practice. The day passed like this, and Wang, without knowing when, had emerged again, to practice the art of controlling objects. The mountain gate was peaceful and tranquil, all sound hushed except for Wang Ye's relentless shouting, which was incredibly rhythmic. Clang. The sound of a stone crashing brought Wang back from his practice. Looking closely, Wang Ya's excited roars were incessant. I finally succeeded. I finally succeeded. Wang felt a sense of relief. He thought about how it had taken him about 10 days to master the art of controlling objects with his mid-grade water spiritual roots, while Wang Ye had mastered it in just over 2 days. It was truly remarkable how quickly he mastered it. This must have been due to the passive understanding inherent in the family's size, and of course, her unwavering persistence. Wang Zi was also alarmed and hurried out. Seeing that Wang Ye had successfully mastered the art of controlling objects, it was really too fast and he couldn't help but be a little surprised. In this world, there are really many things that are beyond imagination. Could this kid really have such a comprehension? Master, I've mastered it. Please teach me the art of sword control as soon as possible. Wang Ye said excitedly. She felt a sense of accomplishment. It was indeed very important to follow the right master. If it were Master Wang Zimin and the others, they might not teach so carefully. Sword control requires proficiency in the art of controlling objects before you can learn it. You have just mastered the art of controlling objects and it's too fast to learn sword control. Besides, you are only at the first level of key training. If something goes wrong and you fall, you will be the first cultivator to die from the fall. Wang Zi put on the attitude of a master and persuaded. Wang Ye said oh. When she heard that she was going to be the first cultivator to die from the fall, she quickly gave up thinking about it. It would be better to practice controlling objects until she was proficient before learning. Since you have already mastered the art of controlling objects, I will teach you another basic spell today, which is the art of insight, one of the 5 basic spells. Wang Zi said. Wang Ye listened and quickly did it, and became serious. Wang De has been listening beside him to see how good Wang Zi's teaching is. Please give me some recommendation votes. Chapter 37 Another child with spiritual energy. Clairvoyance is different from other spells. It's not a specific spell, but rather an imperceptible one. Simply put, even mortals can use this technique, though they don't call it a spell, they call it a feeling. While mortals' feelings have a certain degree of accuracy, they ultimately cannot know specific things, they simply form judgments based on subjective experience. However, a cultivator's clairvoyance is different. Initially, practicing clairvoyance will enhance your senses. Specifically, your hearing will improve and your vision will extend. Of course, these are just the basics. As your cultivation level increases, it will allow you to sense things you can't see or hear within your range. For example, at the 6th level of key training, if I unleash clairvoyance, I can roughly perceive the scene of their training down the mountain. As Wang Zi spoke, she closed her eyes and chanted a spell. The surrounding spiritual energy remained unchanged, but Wang Zi could sense distant things through her own spiritual power, allowing her to see and hear things far away. For example, right now, my people are teaching them to meditate and breathe, and there's a little boy slacking off, Wang Zi said. Wang Ye, stunned, her eyes widened. She hadn't noticed any change in Wang Zi. Retracting his hands, Wang Zi stood up. This spell is essential for every cultivator, and it's also extremely important. At your current level, mastering it will only make you slightly stronger than a mortal. Once you reach my level, you'll be able to achieve much greater precision, and your scope will be much wider. Once you reach the foundation establishment stage, your spiritual energy will be able to be channeled externally. Unleashing the insight technique will grant you the power of the mind's eye, allowing you to observe distant, invisible scenes. This is a profound divine power. Wang Ye nodded earnestly. Isn't this like clairvoyance and super hearing? Truly impressive. However, this spell also has its drawbacks. It can intrude upon others' privacy. Once you unleash the insight technique to observe other cultivators, they'll be able to detect you observing them, even if you're several realms higher, Wang Zi said. Does this mean you can't spy on others? Wang Ye asked. Yes, so it's best not to spy on other cultivators, as this might anger them. This is a common understanding among cultivators. Unless you're in combat, there's no such taboo, Wang Zi said. Yes. Wang Ye nodded. However, if the realm gap is too great, for example, if you're at the foundation establishment stage and observe a key condensation cultivator below the 8th level, then others won't be able to detect you observing them, so it's not impossible to peek, Wang Zi said. What if I check on my family back home? Will they notice me? Wang Ye asked. No, even at the 1st level of key condensation, Mortals can't detect me observing them, Wang Zi said. With that, Wang Zi began teaching. Wang Da stopped watching and returned to his practice. Soon, the instructions were complete, and Wang Ye tried a few times, with Wang Zi coaching from the side. This insight technique is incredibly simple. You should be able to master it with a few more practices, but don't practice here. The clan leader is practicing, so don't disturb him. Go practice in the nearby woods. Wang Zi dismissed Wang Ye and returned to her room. She had already reached the 6th level of key condensation and had just unleashed her insight technique, so naturally, she noticed Wang Da peeking at her, and Wang Da also noticed her insight technique. For the next day, Wang Ye practiced the art of clairvoyance, observing insects and birds in the woods. For the next few days, Wang Zi instructed her to continue practicing the art of controlling objects, letting her practice on her own, as well as focusing on daily cultivation, which was the most important thing. Wang Da had recently upgraded all his contributions to the courtyard down the mountain, which had already reached level 10. Courtyard, Wang Zai, Wang Zai, level 10, 10 contributions required to upgrade. As expected, after level 10, the contribution required for this courtyard doubled, which was a bit too much to bear. Furthermore, while the effects of these 3 upgrades were somewhat enhanced, they were still quite average. While he wasn't sure what the effects would be for further upgrades, Wang Da suspected they would be like the houses, with more contributions providing the same effect, which would make the cost effectiveness low. However, just as Wang Da was considering whether to continue upgrading the buildings or save his contributions, another person down the mountain successfully absorbed spiritual energy. Although also extremely fast, it was still 5 or 6 days slower than Wang Ye. At this time, Wang Ye was still practicing the art of controlling objects, but she was already much more proficient. Wang Da went down, expecting another boy with low-grade spiritual roots, but unexpectedly, it was Wang Tao. Although he also had low-grade spiritual roots, he didn't have a single spiritual root, but rather a dual spiritual root with low-grade fire spiritual roots and miscellaneous water spiritual roots, which restrained him. Seeing Wang Zimin's difficult expression, Wang Da also knew what he was thinking. Ever since he brought these children up the mountain, he actually liked this one the most. He also had low-grade spiritual roots. Although he was playful and not as good as Wang Ye and Wang Ziazan, he was still a child after all. However, this child was indeed talented and had always made the fastest progress, and that was despite his daily playfulness. It was only because of Wang Ye's daily hard work that he surpassed him. Wang Ye was bold and had no rules, so Wang Zimin was still unhappy. Fire element spiritual roots, but none of us 4 have them. I have low-grade gold element spiritual roots, Wang Lin has low-grade earth element spiritual roots, and senior sister Wang Zi also has low-grade gold element spiritual roots. With senior sister Wang Zi's cultivation level, it would have been possible to cultivate with him and suppress his dual element spiritual roots, but senior sister Wang Zi has already taken in Wang Ye. What do you think of Wang Tao, clan leader? Wang Zimin and Wang Da discussed this outside the courtyard. Since you like this child, and your cultivation is not weak, then you should take him in, Wang Da said. I think so, but I don't have fire element spiritual roots either. While I can suppress it, it will also hinder his cultivation, Wang Zimin said. In the past, when the clan was large, most disciples were elders from the same clan, allowing them to maximize their spiritual root talents. But now, with the situation, that's naturally out of the question. Don't worry. Spiritual roots are only one aspect, cultivation is the most important thing. With me here, nothing will happen, Wang Da advised. Wang Zimin fell silent. But Wang Tao inside was a little timid when he heard that he was going to take Wang Zimin as his master. Not every child was as bold as Wang Ye. Although Wang Tao was not bad, he did not dare to ask for a change of master, and just accepted it silently. After all, Wang Zimin was the strictest among the few people. Wang Da did not come down often, and usually Wang Zimin and Wang Lin taught them. Although Wang Lin was also strict, at least he talked and laughed, not so serious. But Wang Zimin was meticulous. In his heart, he cultivated them as the future pillars of the family. When the other children saw this, they all felt that they were outshined and went back to their rooms to practice. Wang Tao went into the house to pack his things, and then he would go to live in the mountains. Chapter 38 Wushan Zhao Family. Wang Da and Wang Zimin stood outside the house. You are the most responsible of the 4 of us for these children, but don't forget your own cultivation. After all, personal cultivation is the most important thing. I'm old now, and with low-grade spiritual roots, even if I continue to cultivate, what good will it do? I'm destined not to reach the foundation establishment stage. Rather than wasting time, I should focus my energy on educating them and developing the clan, Wang Zimin sighed. As he'd said, low-grade spiritual roots were destined to be difficult to cultivate to the foundation establishment stage. Even though the changes at the mountain gate had accelerated cultivation several times faster than before, he was old and destined to miss the foundation establishment stage. Spending so much time improving his cultivation was better spent doing something more useful. You're mistaken. Cultivation is all about the pursuit of immortality, but for low-ranking clans like us, it's become a privileged class above mortals, forgetting the true nature of cultivators. Believe me, the mountain gate's current changes are only temporary. It will only get better in the future. Not only will we reach the foundation establishment stage, but even higher realms are within our reach, Wang said. Really? Wang Zimin's face was filled with excitement. Yes, don't give up on your faith. Otherwise, even with more resources and a better environment, you won't be able to cultivate, Wang said. At this point, Wang Tao came out, and Wang Zimin took him up the mountain. Wang De looked after them for a while, and then Wang Lin came down the mountain. Now Wang Lin had reached the 5th level of key training, the same level as Wang Zimin. Compared to Wang Zimin, Wang Lin, in addition to taking turns teaching the children, also practiced intensively. Perhaps he felt motivated, wanting to be worthy of the fairy Ziyu. He was also aware of the recent changes at the mountain gate, and his daily practice, so he stepped up his efforts. Both of them had low-grade spiritual roots, but Wang Lin's was much smaller than Wang Zimin's, yet they were now at the same level. This was also why Wang De encouraged Wang Zimin. Spiritual roots were only one of many elements of cultivation. Losing confidence and perseverance was the most terrifying thing. Like Wang Lin, inspired to work tirelessly day and night, Wang De, who continued to cultivate at this pace, was also slowly transforming the mountain gate. His cultivation would surely not fall behind, and he would certainly reach the foundation establishment stage in the future. Speaking of which, while Wang De contributed the most each day, most of the rest came from Wang Lin. Wang Zi contributed more during his training, but he also frequently went to practice his magic and look after other things at the mountain gate, so his contributions varied. At this moment, a group of 7 people, each wearing matching Taoist robes and clutching immortal swords, stood in a neat formation outside the mountain gate. Clan leader, the Wang family's dragon gate has been destroyed, and there are no disciples guarding the gate. How can we visit them? A man said respectfully to a young man in front. It seems Liu Xingxing's words are true. The Wang family has indeed fallen to this state, the young man in front sighed. I heard there are only 3 left, and they've recruited some young disciples. If it weren't for the recent formation of the 7 Sects Alliance, which has put some control over the eastern region, and the support of the neighboring Liu family, they would have been destroyed long ago, another man nearby said to himself. Then, clan leader, do we still need to visit? Asked the man who had answered earlier. The young man nodded and turned to the other man behind him. Brother Gu, please shout to the mountain gate. Visitors must be treated with courtesy. Entering rashly is against the rules. The young man behind him, known as Brother Gu, immediately stepped forward and mobilized his spiritual energy. A sound wave emanated from his throat, echoing throughout the mountain gate. Zhao Ju, head of the Wushan Zhao family, and his disciples are here to visit. Wang De, who was at the foot of the mountain, heard it most clearly and was immediately startled. Wushan Zhao family, Zhao Ju? Who is that? I don't seem to know him, but the other person's voice was clearly coming from the mountain gate. Moreover, the person shouting had a high level of cultivation. The sound waves could penetrate the entire Wang family's mountain gate, and their spiritual power was so abundant that Wang De felt ashamed of himself. Everyone on the mountain heard it. Wang Lin and Wang Zimin naturally knew the Wushan Zhao family, but Wang Zimin was up there at the moment. Wang Lin emerged from the courtyard. Who is this Wushan Zhao family? Wang De asked. They're the clan of Aunt Wang Chemo, and they're friendly with our Wang family, Wang Lin explained. Then go and welcome them up. We can't keep them waiting, Wang De said. Wang Lin naturally went downstairs. Behind him, Wang Zimin had already descended on his sword. Seeing Wang Lin leave, he felt relieved. Clan leader, Wang De nodded, and led him to the intersection to wait. When Wang Lin arrived at the mountain gate, he saw the group of people, each of them of extraordinary appearance, and he quickly saluted. "Excuse me for waiting, everyone. Our clan leader sent me to greet you. Please." Everyone followed Wang Lin up the mountain. When they reached the courtyard at the foot of the mountain, they were greeted by Wang Da and Wang Zimin. The two sides exchanged greetings and then ascended the mountain together. Still in the deserted courtyard, in the hall, Zhao Ju intended to chat privately with Wang Da, so Wang Da asked Wang Zimin to take them outside for a stroll. As a woman, and having lived in the Bo family for a long time, Wang Zi naturally understood the etiquette. She found Wang Lin, made tea, and went over. "I'm a bit down on my luck now. Please forgive me for my poor hospitality." Wang Da naturally offered some politeness. Zhao Ju also responded, "You're welcome. Any family would be the same when faced with such a disaster." "Master Zhao, what's the matter with you?" Wang Da asked succinctly, as the other party didn't seem particularly well-mannered or well-behaved. "Nothing serious is going on this time. I'm just visiting. I went to the Liu family a few days ago and visited Liu Zixing," Zhao Ju said. Wang Da was speechless. "Who has time to entertain you if you just come and visit for no reason? I still have to practice." But he couldn't bring himself to say it. Zhao Ju seemed to see Wang Da's confusion and spoke up. "I heard the Wang family only has 3 male descendants now, and since no elders are still alive, naturally no one mentioned it to you. Our 4 families have been friends for generations, intermarrying with each other. It's just that each family is now facing hardship, so we younger generations naturally don't know much about it. Grandmother came over a few days ago. Has the Wang family head met her? Is it Aunt Wang Chemo?" Wang Da asked. Zhao Ju nodded. "Yes, come to think of it, I'm half Wang. Of course I should come and see, of course I should come and see," Wang Da said, then realized he wasn't right. He didn't say he shouldn't come. Zhao Ju smiled awkwardly, then turned serious again. "Although I'm a few years older than the Wang family head, I'm just as young. I've just taken over the family and become the head. Now that the 7 sects alliance has been established, the situation in the East is uncertain. While peace appears on the surface, there are undercurrents. People from the Xiannian sect have already infiltrated, and the outcome is uncertain." After hearing what Zhao Ju said, Wang Da nodded. "What does Patriarch Zhao mean by this?" Zhao Ju glanced at his 14-year-old face. "I came out this time, firstly, to reconnect with old friendships and visit various families, and secondly, because my grandmother is from the Wang family. Now that such a disaster has occurred, I should come and visit her." Although the words sounded nice, there was no sign of his reaction. Before he finished speaking, Wang Da was complaining in his heart, "You came to see us now to see how destitute we are?" Before Zhao Ju finished speaking, he took out a storage ring and placed it on the table. "Our 4 families should help each other. Patriarch Wang, please don't refuse." Chapter 39, Helping in Times of Need. Wang Da was stunned. Someone actually sent him something. However, Wang Da was still very alert and careful. Even without these, there was still a favor. Wang Da did not touch the storage ring, but just said politely, "We, the Wang family, are already deeply relieved that Patriarch Zhao can come to visit. I absolutely cannot accept such a valuable gift." Although the Wang family was also short of money at this time, Wang Da knew that with his own system, it was only a matter of time before he would develop. However, if he had such a batch of resources, it would only accelerate the development. In fact, it was not a bad idea to accept it. At most, he could pay the Zhao family several times more in the future. Zhao Ju did not answer him, but stood up and walked to the window. "In fact, our 4 families have been friends for a long time. Even before the 5-spirit sect established itself in the East, our 4 cultivation families have been friends for generations. It's precisely because of our mutual support that we have not been destroyed. The lords of the East have changed many times, including the current 7-sect alliance, which is unlikely to last forever. However, our 4 low-level families have been able to surpass many other families. To establish a long-term presence in the East, unity is crucial. Back in the days of the Shangwen sect, the Wang family also provided aid to various families, and my Zhao family also received favors from the Wang family. Therefore, Patriarch Wang must not refuse." Wang Da remained silent, his head bowed, still intending to accept the offer. However, Zhao Ju did not stop talking. "I also know the Wang family's situation. I assume that even if you're facing difficulties, you won't be willing to come and ask for help. Therefore, I have no choice but to visit in person. If you're worried, consider it a way of repaying the Wang family for their past support of our Zhao family." Wang De was genuinely moved by these words. Zhao Ju, despite his young age, was so capable, it truly astonished him. He seemed destined for greatness. Unfortunately, in the world of immortal cultivation, strength is paramount, and even the most powerful will eventually become powerless. Wang De already had the intention of accepting the gift, not because he truly valued the gift, but because he admired Zhao Ju as a person. While strength is paramount in the world of immortal cultivation, cultivators are still human. Zhao Ju, who could take such a step at this moment, must be a man of foresight and magnanimity. Compared to Liu Zixing, Wang De could sense the stark difference between them even in just a brief moment of contact. Cultivation requires friends, especially when it comes to growing a powerful force. Even a power like the Mulin sect still has to consider the reputations of these smaller families. Alright. Thank you, Master Zhao. Wang De then touched the stored ring and examined its contents. Over 50 high-grade spirit stones, and nearly 20 or 30 bottles of various medicinal elixirs, each full. Numerous spiritual herbs and medicinal herbs, as well as spiritual fruits, some of which Wang De had never seen before, were also found. Their combined value was likely over 10,000 spirit stones. Wang De accepted the ring, and Zhao Ju felt relieved. The two men exchanged a simple smile. Men seemed to avoid such false politeness. Wang De then invited him out and took them on a tour of the mountain. Most of the Zhao family members inherited wood-type spiritual roots, so they naturally had some knowledge of the mountain's many plants and explained them in detail. There was also the orchard that the aunt had replanted for the Wang family. Although it was only a small plot, it had only recently sprouted. Wang tended to it daily, as he was the only one with a water-type spiritual root. After some consultation, Wang De found that the ant had chosen relatively easy to cultivate spiritual fruit trees, saving him the trouble of tending them daily. As the day wore on, Wang De, grateful, naturally wanted to keep them for a few more days. There were several empty rooms in the mountain, but Zhao Ju and his companions, aware of the Wang family's current situation, hadn't considered staying. "We stayed a few days longer at the Liu family's a few days ago, but we have family matters to attend to this time, and we also need to visit the Sun family, so we won't stay any longer." Wang De naturally didn't want to stay any longer, personally escorting them down the mountain, where they flew away on their swords. It's easier to add icing on the cake than to send timely assistance. Although Wang De had only recently met Zhao Ju, he had already remembered him, even though he had only met him once. Returning to the mountain gate, Wang De was excited. The only use for these spiritual stones was currently to expand his family. With nearly 10,000 spiritual stones, he could expand his family once more. But Wang De was still considering the matter. First, Zhao Ju's gift only amounted to 5,000 spirit stones. The rest consisted of cultivation materials like elixirs and spiritual fruits. If he sold them all, he would need to buy more for future cultivation. He would definitely lose money, leaving only 5,000 spirit stones. Wang De needed to plan carefully and integrate the system to maximize their value. For now, the spirit stones would be most practical for purchasing building supplies. However, 5,000 spirit stones alone would clearly not be enough to raise the clan to level 4. He would need to gradually accumulate resources through contributions and upgrade buildings to achieve this goal. Wang De called Wang Zimin and handed him all the cultivation resources in his stored ring for safekeeping. Wang Zimin naturally accepted them. The other two, knowing the Zhao family's purpose, immediately felt that the Zhao family was being righteous. Wang Zimin accepted the elixirs and made a quick estimate. Given the current number of members in the clan, they should have no shortage of basic elixirs for cultivation in the short term. However, such gifts of resources were not a long-term solution. He then suggested to Wang De that he increase his income, but Wang De could only give a perfunctory response. Wang De was also preparing to personally visit Tiji Market to spend 5,000 spirit stones to expand his building points. The remaining resources were contributions. The fastest way to do this was to upgrade every building to level 10. This would allow him to see each building's unique characteristics and also increase his clan building points slightly. However, some buildings require too many contributions, so Wang De had to upgrade them one by one. Having previously upgraded the courtyard below, Wang De was next planning to upgrade the spirit spring. After all, the spirit spring was a natural structure. While it bore traces of human intervention, It was a constant source of spiritual water, emanating from the core of the mountain. Whether it was for cultivation, alchemy, or weapon forging, it had countless uses, and upgrading it should offer significant benefits. However, Wang was distressed by the 50 contribution points required to upgrade one level. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only hope the bonus would offset the contribution cost. The few dozen contribution points remaining were only enough for one upgrade, so Wang simply clicked on it. Small spiritual spring, level 2, 50 contributions required to upgrade. Just like the upgraded house, the exterior remained unchanged. Wang dipped a little bit of it into his finger and tasted it. Wow! It was essentially the same as before. The amount of spiritual energy should be the same, and everything else was pretty much the same. But Wang knew that upgrading would definitely change things. Perhaps the current level was too low for it to be noticeable. He'd better save up contributions and upgrade. Chapter 40 Wandering in Heijifang City. The next morning, Wang left early and headed for Heiji Market. Since Wang Lin had brought him there last time, he was pretty familiar with the route. Yesterday, Wang had been thinking about how the training room currently only had a large shelf, and what was left inside was still missing. He had originally intended to use the 5,000 spirit stones to purchase a training room item, but when he pulled out Wang Zimin's list, he realized that he had already purchased most of the smaller items during his previous trips to Heiji Market. Only 2 larger items remained. One was a natural 5 elements treasure, used to enhance the 5 element spirit gathering array. To be considered a treasure was rare in the outside world, especially since it required a strong single element attribute. It was also the most valuable item in a training room. While expensive, it was highly effective. Combined with the 5 element spirit gathering array, it could catalyze the treasure's single element attribute, transforming spiritual energy into single element spiritual energy. This way, a cultivator cultivating within this single element spiritual energy would see their effectiveness multiplied. However, each of these 5 elements natural treasures isn't cheap. While they vary in variety and prices, the cheapest one costs over 30,000 spirit stones, making even one barely affordable with 5,000 spirit stones. While items like spirit wood can be considered natural treasures, their inherent power is too weak to sustain a large-scale 5-element spirit gathering formation, let alone provide a continuous supply of wood-attributed energy. Most importantly, all 5 elements treasures must be present. If only 1 or 2 are present, without all 5, they will be useless. The power of the 5 elements is essential and mutually reinforcing, maintaining its function. Wang essentially reserved this for himself, not expecting to find them all right away. The second item is the spirit stone itself. Its primary function is to prevent a leakage of spiritual energy. Of course, this requires a large quantity of spirit stone to completely isolate the entire training room, having only a few would be insufficient. There are many types of spirit stones, one of which is the spirit crystal. This is actually a spirit stone, but it can hardly be considered a spirit stone because it contains so much spiritual energy that it possesses the qualities of a treasure. While the amount of spiritual energy in low-grade spirit stones is small, that in mid-grade spirit stones is abundant, that in high-grade spirit stones is rich, and that in high-grade spirit crystals is incredibly dense. Pure spiritual energy liquefies and then solidifies into crystals, so its richness can be imagined. Training rooms require spirit stones to isolate single attribute spiritual energy. Low-grade spirit stones are ineffective, while mid-grade spirit stones are adequate, and high-grade spirit stones are even better, but the best is still spirit crystals. However, even the 5 spirit sect, previously, would not have been able to build a training room using spirit crystals. Wang looked at the 5,000 low-grade spirit stones in his hand and estimated that they wouldn't even be enough to cover a single corner. Previously, only 3 of the Wang family's training rooms were isolated with low-grade spirit stones, leaving the rest exposed. Wang reconsidered, deciding to use his contributions to upgrade buildings instead of exchanging them for spirit stones. Gathering both in a short period of time would be difficult, but he couldn't let the 5,000 spirit stones sit idle. He had to buy something to add to his building points. Combined with his own contributions to upgrade other buildings, he believed he could quickly reach level 4. He arrived at Heiji Market with ease, but this time he wasn't looking for treasure. He simply wandered around, looking for anything that could add a few more points to his family's building structure. He happened to stumble upon a sect shop. A young man outside, at the second level of key training, noticed Wang's youthful appearance but extraordinary demeanor and greeted him. "Fellow Taoist, are you looking for anything?" Wang looked over. It turned out to be a shop selling formations. Wang Lin had indeed been there before, bringing him here. The clan's 5-element spirit gathering formations were all purchased there. Wang walked in, casually browsing, and saw numerous descriptions of formations. Most of them were for cultivation, such as spirit gathering formations, but there were also some auxiliary ones, like temperature control formations and insect repellent formations used in spiritual fields. Wang was curious. He hadn't noticed these interesting formations on his last visit. Seeing Wang's interest, the waiter explained them one by one. Most of these formations come from other places. Our sect is already adept at refining formations, so we collect them from all over. Those places have been peaceful for a long time, unlike our Yizhao, where there's constant fighting, so we enjoy studying them. While these formations are similar in effectiveness to the techniques practiced by water and fire cultivators, they offer greater longevity. A single set of formations can be used on a large spiritual field, requiring minimal care. You only need to check on them periodically, saving time for cultivation. Although Wang found them interesting, he didn't have any spiritual fields or medicinal herbs cultivated at home, only an orchard. He thought buying one would be a good idea to try. "Can the orchard be used?" Wang asked. "For a spiritual orchard, you don't need a set, but this one." The waiter showed Wang nearby. "Spiritual fruits are inherently hardy and don't require much care. With this formation, I can completely let go and only need to check on them once a month." Wang nodded in satisfaction. His family was short on staff at the moment, unlike other families with many useless people, so they left everything to their children. "How much does this set cost?" Wang asked. "There are two. Let me explain it to you first, then you decide. These 6 small formations cover a wide area, providing catalysis, precipitation, and insect repellent, costing 5,500 spirit stones. This is the cheaper set. There's another set that, in addition to these 6 small formations, also has a series of effects that increase yield, such as weak spirit gathering and essence concentration. This one costs 10,800 spirit stones." Wang listened and thought, while the results were impressive, they were truly the product of someone with nothing better to do. He would be better off tending to them himself every few days. However, Wang had a calculation in mind. This formation was considered a building, and his system could be upgraded. Even if he bought the cheaper set. With the remaining contributions, Wang could use them to upgrade it after returning, potentially achieving significant results. He made up his mind, but he still needed to negotiate the price. This latter set is mainly used for high-quality spiritual fruit trees. Using this formation will not only increase yields but also potentially produce high-quality mutant fruit. The former set is for ordinary orchards, saving manpower, the clerk continued. While the latter set is effective, it's expensive. We in Yizhao aren't a place of perpetual peace. I doubt many people would spend spirit stones on such things, right? Wang sighed. To be honest, the Zhao family bought the latter set of formations from us a few days ago, the clerk said. Of course, the Zhao family is a family heirloom of the wood element, so they're naturally interested in these things. Besides the Zhao family, have you sold any other items? Wang asked. Chapter 41, Xianyan Sex Spy. The clerk scratched his head. To be honest, there are some families specializing in planting and cultivation that are buying, but they're selling very little. Seeing as you're also a family purchasing, everyone knows what Yizhao is like, and the elders in the sect are just curious, so I'm just refining some to see what the market is like. If you really want it, I'll reduce the price of the spirit stones. How about that? The cheaper set is 4,200 spirit stones. If you agree, I'll buy it now, Wang said. To be honest, we didn't set up these formations with the intention of making money, just recouping our investment. And 4,200 won't even cover our investment, the clerk said sincerely. It seemed like everyone in Heiji Market said this, but in reality, their items couldn't be sold at cost at all. 4,300, I don't want any more, Wang said flatly. The clerk hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Alright, let's just consider it a deal. 4,300 spirit stones, you can take it. Wang simply paid the spirit stones and stored the formation in his storage ring. He then walked to the side, where battle formations were displayed. Battle formations were generally small, ready for immediate use, and were often used by cultivators with limited combat abilities as a means of survival. There were also formations with special effects that could be incredibly effective in battle. Wang suddenly thought of the clan protection formation. Although he knew he couldn't afford it, he still wanted to ask. Do you have a large formation here? A clan protection formation? A clan protection formation? The shop assistant was surprised. This guy couldn't even afford an orchard formation, yet he was asking about a clan protection formation. Although he felt disdainful, as a shop assistant, he naturally couldn't show it, so he spoke immediately. We do have a sect protecting formation, but it needs to be custom made. If you'd like one, you can come to our Jiangshan sect and discuss it with the sect elders. While our elders may not have high cultivation, they are all at least 3rd rank weapon refiners. A formation like this requires at least a 4th rank weapon refiner, and only our sect master and 2 supreme elders can craft it. The waiter didn't mention the price, and Wang didn't ask again. He probably would have been terrified if he had. Seeing Wang's expression, the waiter jokingly added, but even if you went, you'd probably have to wait. The 7 Sects Alliance has just been established, and peace is reigning in the east. Many families and sects have sought our help to craft a sect-protecting formation. Wang naturally knew that each family's situation was similar, but a sect-protecting formation was essential for any power. Although he possessed a magical treasure Wanku left by Zissou, it was incomparable to a sect-protecting formation. Wang understood that even the simplest sect-protecting formation could deter challengers of higher ranks. For example, if the Wang family currently employed a simpler formation, employing only a few key condensation cultivators, they could easily stop 1 or 2 foundation establishment cultivators. While this would only block, not kill, attackers, it could still delay the attack. A more advanced formation could repel intruders, but this was all hearsay, as the Wang family previously employed a simpler one. Unfortunately, the delay proved ineffective, ultimately leading to the near extinction of the clan. Wang had long considered acquiring this item, but lacked spirit stones to purchase it, leading to his current question. After leaving the formation shop, Wang wandered around, but with only a little over 700 spirit stones, he couldn't afford much, so he decided to keep some as a backup. Furthermore, a few spirit stones would be more effective during their cultivation and breakthroughs. As they left the street, they encountered 7 or 8 larger men, each holding a shovel-like magical weapon. Each was burly, but their cultivation levels were clearly not very high. "Fellow Taoist, do you need to dig a cave?" the leading man asked. As Wang approached, he approached. "Dig a cave?" Wang asked curiously. "Yes, we need to build a cave dwelling. You know, all the cave dwellings for the independent cultivators in Fanfic Mountain were dug by our Mi family," the man said. "Digging a cave dwelling? No need," Wang demurred. "Oh, fellow Taoist, aren't you an independent cultivator?" the man asked. "No," Wang replied casually. "We can also tap into spiritual springs, build secret chambers, dig canals and ditches." Before the man could finish his words, Wang had already walked away. Entering the street, he noticed that it was different from before. Today, it was busier, with more cultivators strolling around. Wang continued walking forward and suddenly saw a group of cultivators gathered in front of him. Although Wang had no intention of watching the crowd, he approached. A middle-aged man was setting up a stall, but there were only 2 items in front of his stall. A round, crimson bead, emitting a red glow, and a scale, semicircular and slightly flattened, with a rainbow color, but not emitting any light. Wang, naturally unaware, listened intently to the conversation of the people in front of him. It turned out that the round bead was actually a firebird beast pill, and the scales were firebird scales. Wang didn't know much about demonic beasts, but he knew that Hiji Market didn't seem to sell any demonic beast-related items. The only thing he had encountered was the anaconda meat he'd eaten that day, brought by the ant. From the way they were talking, it was clear that this firebird was no ordinary demonic beast. A single pill and a single scale could attract so many people, it must be something extraordinary. Wang simply watched the excitement. Many people inquired about the price, but no one could afford it. The middle-aged man immediately demanded 50,000 spirit stones, a sum no one in the outer circle of Hiji Market could afford. Even if it was a treasure, it wasn't of much use to Wang right now, so he just watched. Seeing that no one was around, simply observing the excitement, the crowd gradually dispersed. Wang continued walking, unknowingly reaching the end of the outer area. Looking up, he saw the interior of Hejifang City, a place generally reserved for high-ranking cultivators. Ordinary cultivators were barred. Just as he was about to turn, a bang! A figure flew out from inside. He landed heavily on the ground, bloodied and in a disfigured state. Wang and several passers-by dodged to the side. Though severely injured, the figure wasn't dead. A quick use of his spiritual power revealed that he was a cultivator at the 9th level of key training, a truly impressive level of cultivation. Then, 3 people flew out, each wielding a flying sword. With a single incantation, the one who had flown out was instantly dead. Members of the Mulin sect? Wang naturally noticed that the 3 figures behind him were wearing Mulin's clothing. With just a quick glance, Wang retreated from this troubled place. Whatever was happening was beyond the control of a mere cultivator like him, and seeing things he shouldn't have was unpleasant. After leaving the main street, Wang returned to the street where the shops were located. After wandering for another half-day, he finally found his spot. Leaving Heiji Market, Wang soared on his sword. Suddenly, he saw a spiritual energy pulsing in the distant forest, a vibrant radiance. Knowing that curiosity kills the cat, especially in this desolate wilderness, Wang decided to take a detour. Following screams, Wang saw a group of dozens of people, all wearing Mulin sect uniforms, flying out of the forest. Wang flew away, taking note of the incident, unsure of the reason. Outside the forest, many of the Mulin sect disciples were also injured, each preparing to fly back to Heiji Market. I didn't expect the Zionian sect spies to have reached this point. Fortunately, we discovered them early, otherwise, a Mulin sect disciple sighed. The leader's face was also grave. Your team, go to Heiji Market and investigate to see if there are any spies who have slipped through the net. If you are defeated, notify us immediately, he instructed the team in front. He turned and looked at the team behind him. Go report back to Senior Brother Li and tell him about the situation here. Just as the Mulin sect's disciples dispersed, Wang had already returned to the mountain gate. He naturally didn't know that while the seemingly peaceful eastern region was actually turbulent. Of course, this was all the business of the major forces in the Seven Sects Alliance. With the Wang family's current strength, naturally no one cared about them, and no one would tell them. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Upgrading the Spirit Spring. Back at the sect, Wang set up the formation and then checked the system. Orchard plus 600. The formation wasn't displayed, but the points were added. Family points. 2,560, 5,000. 1 small spiritual spring plus 90. 11 houses plus 250. 1 kitchen, magic instruments and kitchenware, plus 30. Spirit stone condenser plus 400. 2 courtyards plus 94. 3 small 5-element spirit gathering arrays plus 300. 1 large 5-element spirit gathering array plus 500. 35 elements futons plus 60. Spiritual orchard plus 600. 3 miniature flower gardens plus 2. Forest plus 5. 20 heart-clearing grass plants plus 3.8. He still needed about half the points, so the rest would have to come from contributions. Contribution upgrades were quite effective. 11 houses added 250 building points. Wang's own house was level 41, and the others were all level 10. The 250 points added was well worth the contribution investment. However, this spiritual spring only adds 40 points after being upgraded to the next level. Wang felt that the cost-effectiveness was a joke, and he didn't know how the building points were calculated. If it weren't for future considerations, Wang would have wanted to directly build hundreds of simple houses, upgrade them all to level 10, and forcibly upgrade the family building points to level 4. However, this is obviously unrealistic, and the future must be considered. While he was thinking, he felt another pair of cultivators flying over Kangentropy Mountain in the distance. Wang looked closely and found that it was indeed the group of disciples from Mulin sect, but they obviously had no intention of coming down and flew away directly. Ignoring them, Wang went down the mountain to find Wang Lin. Now that Wang Zimin was training with Wang Tao, the remaining children naturally had to be taken care of by Wang Lin. However, Wang Zimin was not often up there, and often went down to teach them together with Wang Lin. Wang checked the progress of the remaining 5 people one by one. The 3 children with inferior spiritual roots had just begun to sense spiritual energy, and it would likely take a long time for it to enter their bodies. This was the limitation of their spiritual roots' innate abilities. Even with the 3 passive effects of the Wang family sect, which increased cultivation speed, spiritual energy concentration, and comprehension, these 3 inferior spiritual root children still needed a considerable amount of time to even achieve this simple step of spiritual energy incorporation. As for the other child with low-grade earth spiritual roots, he had sensed spiritual energy early on, but it was clearly not yet internalized. Wang Zimin had originally estimated that this wouldn't take long, but he had yet to cultivate to the point of spiritual incorporation. Wang Ziazhen, perhaps because Wang De had initially refused to accept him, had been exceptionally diligent, especially after Wang Ye and Wang Tao had successfully infused spiritual energy into their bodies. However, due to his inferior spiritual roots, his progress was not much faster than that of the other 3 children with inferior spiritual roots. Seeing Wang De's face grim and slightly anxious, Wang Zimin offered his advice. His current cultivation speed was already exceptionally fast. In the past, even low-grade spiritual roots would have required 3 months to cultivate to the point where spiritual energy entered the body. But now, Wang Ye had achieved this in just over 20 days. Although Wang Tao was a few days behind, it had only been about a month. For low-grade spiritual roots, even half a year to achieve spiritual energy was considered a feat. With only a little over a month having passed, there was no need to rush. Wang De, aware of the system's enhancements, naturally wanted to advance rapidly. Furthermore, seeing the Mulin sect disciples around today clearly indicated that things were stirring under the surface. He had to provide the Wang family with a foothold while things were calm. He didn't know how long this would take, but he knew it couldn't be compared to the family's previous cultivation level. At that rate, a family of hundreds would only have 1 or 2 in the foundation establishment stage, leaving them with no resources to cope with adversity. While improving their cultivation, he also had to ensure his own cultivation remained stable. 7 or 8 days passed unnoticed. Wang De spent his time cultivating and visiting the foot of the mountain to urge them to cultivate diligently. As for the accumulated contributions, they continued to upgrade the spirit spring, adding a significant amount of building points, though it was still a long way from 5,000. All that remained was to keep a close eye on the situation outside. Fortunately, the Mulin sect disciples seemed to have resolved their issues and had barely appeared in the area. Wang De knew that peace had been restored for now, but after this incident, he also knew that this peace wouldn't last. Whether it was the Xiannian sect, the former Shangzong Valley, the Five Spirit sect, or even the current Mulin sect, the cultivation world had always been a battle for resources and benefits. The departure of the Mulin sect disciples didn't reassure Wang De. Instead, it intensified his anxiety. However, whether it was for the development of the family or his personal cultivation, he couldn't rush too much and must make steady progress. Most importantly, Wang De had made some progress in his cultivation, but it seemed he had reached a bottleneck. His level 44 house, his passive skill, and the fact that he was the only mid-grade spiritual root in his family had allowed him to cultivate at an exceptionally fast pace, and in just a few days, he was on the verge of another breakthrough. Still just a little short, Wang De had intended to push on, remaining in his hut to cultivate until he achieved a breakthrough. However, down the mountain, another child with a low-grade earth-type spiritual root had also successfully cultivated to the point of spiritual energy entering their bodies. As an earth-type spiritual root, this child followed Wang Lin in his cultivation. Wang De, as the clan leader, simply went down to offer a few words of encouragement before returning to his hut to practice in seclusion. However, the 3 of them now had to lead their disciples in cultivation, leaving them with limited time to care for the remaining 4 children. Wang De had no choice but to take time off daily to look after them. Of course, this was necessary. While personal cultivation was important, the family's growth would also provide more bonuses and cultivation resources for his system. It was a matter of trade-offs. After the 3 of them had spiritual energy infused into their bodies and began their formal cultivation, Wang De's system saw a significant increase in daily contribution. The spiritual spring had already reached level 10, requiring 450 contribution points. Fortunately, the daily contribution had increased, otherwise, even in just over 10 days, he wouldn't have been able to reach that 450 contribution points. Small spiritual spring, level 10, 100 contributions required to upgrade. The bonuses from level 10 onwards weren't as significant as Wang had imagined. Instead, the daily water output increased significantly. The concentration of spiritual energy also increased, though not significantly. It seemed to be progressing towards spiritual liquid, though it hadn't yet reached that level. While the water from the spiritual spring was a common spiritual spring in the world of immortal cultivation, a common resource for cultivators, spiritual liquid was different. Spiritual liquid was divided into 3 levels, the highest of which could be described as liquid spiritual energy. It seemed that for a natural structure like this, the spiritual spring needed to be upgraded to a high level to truly realize its value. If it could truly produce spiritual liquid daily, Wang could simply sell it daily and it would be enough to sustain his entire family. Chapter 43, Problems with the Gonfa. Wang didn't plan to upgrade other buildings first, but instead invested all of his contribution points in his own house. Naturally, the house accelerated cultivation, and Wang had a selfish motive. His house, originally level 41, couldn't be upgraded after reaching level 49. House, Wang level 49, 999 contribution points required for upgrading. Originally, each level up after level 40 required only 4 contribution points, but after reaching level 49, it now required 999 contribution points to reach level 50. Wang didn't have that much? A qualitative change? This was Wang's first thought upon seeing the 999 contribution points at the end. Previously, it only required 4 contribution points to upgrade, but now it required 999 contribution points. But what was the qualitative change after the house reached level 50? There had to be some change, or perhaps a bonus, or 999 contribution points would be too much of a ripoff for only one level. But what exactly was this change? Wang didn't know yet. However, based on Wang's recent observations, the bonuses decrease as buildings are upgraded. Level 10 was a crucial milestone, and now it seems that level 50 is the key. Wang is now considering whether to save up 999 contributions to see what the qualitative change will bring, or to wait a few days to upgrade other buildings. This is a very difficult question. If it's selfish, he would naturally upgrade his own building. Perhaps after the qualitative change, his cultivation speed will be even faster, 7 or 8 times faster than before, perhaps 20 or 30 times faster. If it's for the continued development of the system and the clan, then upgrading other buildings is definitely the best option. Firstly, level 10 is the most cost-effective. Even if the Spirit Spring cost 450 contributions, the increased daily Spirit Spring output alone is a good deal, not to mention the richer spiritual energy within the spring. Of these 2 options, one is visible, with visible effects as soon as the upgrade is completed, while the other is invisible and common sense. Wang chose the latter, believing that the stable development of the clan is the best path. As for the qualitative change of this house, he could try it out in the future when his daily contributions increased. By then, his contribution tolerance would be higher, wouldn't it? However, Wang was still hesitant about which building to upgrade next. He could roughly guess the effect of the spirit gathering array, but the small one, the one the 4 of them were using, required 100 contributions to upgrade at a time. Upgrading it to level 10 would cost 1,000 contributions, roughly the same as upgrading Wang's house. However, Wang clearly didn't want to upgrade the 4 small ones. 1 to level 10 would cost 1,000 contributions, and 4 would cost 4,000. It was too expensive. Furthermore, with only the 4 of them using it, it couldn't be used by the entire clan, limiting its usefulness and making it too cost-effective. The large 5-element spirit gathering array, the one in the training room, required 500 contributions per level. While that was expensive, he could imagine it covering the entire training room after upgrading, making it worth the contribution price. Although the training room was almost complete, the clan was still small. It wouldn't be too late to upgrade it once the clan had grown larger. So Wang set his sights on the Spirit Stone Condenser. He'd originally purchased it to accumulate points, and since installing it, he'd only occasionally check on it, collecting a few spirit stones every few days. The output was scarce, but it was better than nothing. It was rare, not because it was expensive, but mainly because it was useless. But now, it seemed to be useful to Wang. He was eager to see what the upgraded Spirit Stone Condenser would become. As a machine for refining Spirit Stone, it was similar to how cultivators condensed Spirit Stone. Wang knew this thing was different from other structures. Its sole purpose was to condense Spirit Stone. He imagined that after the upgrade, it would be solely related to this function. Spirit Stone, as a fundamental resource in the world of cultivation, naturally, the more the better. After making his decision, Wang began accumulating contribution points. Upgrading the Spirit Stone condenser required 100 contribution points, so Wang needed to upgrade it by at least one level to see the results. He realized once again that contribution points were scarce. It was ultimately due to the lack of people. After studying the system for a while, Wang opened the secondary contribution interface. He had previously seen the secondary interface for family contribution points, where many items could be purchased at prices roughly comparable to those purchased with Spirit Stones in the outside world. He assumed that exchanging contribution points for Spirit Stones would yield the same results. However, he misjudged the fact that many items in the outside world were priceless, while items within the system had no quantity limit. This meant that this was something worth researching. There were many treasures that were difficult to find in the outside world, but they could be purchased with contribution points within his system. However, these items were too expensive, requiring too many contributions. Later, when contribution points increased, he could use this to farm Spirit Stones, but that wasn't feasible in the short term. Cheap items were generally readily available in the outside world. For now, Wang was only interested in a few simple items, cultivation techniques. Contribution value in the upper left corner. 25. Low-grade Spirit Stone X1. 1. Medium-grade Spirit Stone X1. 10. High-grade Spirit Stone X1. 100. Low-level Heavenly Control Technique. 500. Low-level Immortal Destruction Technique. 500. Currently, the Wang family practices low-level 5 elements techniques, which are readily available from the outside world. Wang himself, too, cultivates low-level 5 elements techniques. Within the system, a low-level technique requires 500 contribution points to redeem, while a 5 elements technique requires 2,500 contribution points. Beyond low-level techniques, there are also lower-level, mid-level, and high-level techniques. Techniques are essential for cultivation, and a good one will undoubtedly be extremely beneficial for future practice. As for the specific benefits, Wang currently only knows of one: increased cultivation speed. This alone is enough to make Wang start considering purchasing a technique. While lower-level techniques were available for sale in the outside world, they were mostly commonplace. The techniques Wang found in the system were mostly from sects, large families, or lost creations not found in the outside world. Clearly, they couldn't compare to those sold outside. Intermediate-level techniques were practically non-existent. These were the very foundation of a family or sect's existence, so naturally, they couldn't be sold. However, within the system, a low-level technique required 5,000 contribution points, while a 5-series technique cost 25,000. A mid-level technique required 50,000 contribution points. Wang, after a quick glance, temporarily abandoned the idea of exchanging for a mid-level technique. The correct approach was to trade for a low-level 5-series technique first, but 25,000 contribution points wasn't a small sum. With a long and arduous journey ahead, Wang could only put the technique issue aside. It was unrealistic to pursue a high-quality technique right now. He should focus on increasing his daily contribution points and developing his family's building points. Chapter 44, Discussion. 3 days later, Wang successfully broke through to the 5th level of key refining, the same realm as Wang Lin. Wang Zimin and Wang Lin were most impressed by Wang's continuous breakthroughs over a period of just over a month. Wang Zimin, who is at the highest level himself, at the 5th level, had unfortunately practiced too little in the past month, preoccupied with family matters, and naturally, hadn't made any breakthroughs. Wang Lin, however, was quite diligent in his practice, successfully breaking through from the 4th to the 5th level. So, now, the 3 of them were at the same realm. Wang couldn't help but nod at them. Although they had all accepted disciples, they couldn't forget to practice. With a mountain gate now having 3 passive abilities, and Wang having upgraded their houses, it was reasonable to assume that their realms would rise quickly. However, the 3 of them had grown accustomed to their previous family routine, focusing more on work than practice. According to their previous habits and understanding, those with lower-grade spiritual roots couldn't break through to the foundation establishment stage. At most, they could only reach a few realms above the key refining stage. Only with resources could lower-grade spiritual roots achieve a breakthrough. In the past, the family's resources were reserved for geniuses. The three of them weren't particularly gifted, and their cultivation wasn't fast. They simply performed routine family tasks daily, convinced they wouldn't reach the foundation establishment stage. Therefore, Wang sought to change their mindset. Being able to cultivate and reach higher realms was paramount. He could find resources if they ran out, and the three children could cultivate on their own, without needing to be accompanied by him full-time. As for Wang Zimin's constant talk of developing spiritual fields and increasing the family's income, Wang rejected them. This wasn't a time for recuperation. Wang didn't want Entropy Mountain. In this mountain, their lives would be nothing more than low-level cultivation, extending their lives by a few decades. What difference would there be between them and ordinary people? The three of them accepted Wang's advice, but their daily lives remained the same. Wang could only change them bit by bit. After all, such mindsets couldn't be shifted overnight. In the blink of an eye, it was already Mid-Autumn Festival. While this mortal festival held little significance for cultivators, it symbolized family reunion, and was celebrated by all cultivating families. Wang Zimin and Wang Zhu went to make arrangements. The kitchen near the spiritual spring opened once again. Wang went to Hiji Market to buy some ingredients. While not as good as what his aunts and sisters had brought, they were still much better than taking fasting pills. 12 people sat around a large round table. As the clan leader, Wang naturally offered words of encouragement. The moon in the sky was incredibly round. Everyone was so inspired by Wang's words that they all practiced all night. The next morning, Wang Yao was the first to emerge. Her sword control skills had become even more proficient. It must be said that among the three with the same talent, Wang Yao was the most diligent, surpassing them by a wide margin. Flying on her sword, they headed off to the mountains to practice. Wang Zi had already taught them the 5 basic techniques, as well as sword control and basic water-based techniques. Wang Zi, originally a metal-based cultivator, knew these basic water-based techniques, but had never practiced them before. Wang had to offer some guidance. Wang's predecessor had already mastered these techniques. As for the remaining cultivation aspects, since they didn't share the same 5 elements attributes, Wang often provided guidance on many of her cultivation questions. Wang Ye had become accustomed to this, first asking her master, Wang Zi, and then coming to Wang if she didn't understand something. The next person to emerge was Wang Tao, who had just learned sword control the day before, but was still shaky and unsure of how to use it. Wang Zimin followed closely behind. Seeing that they had all gone to practice, Wang also headed down the mountain. Now, Wang was alone in the courtyard with the 4 children. Qin Yu looked after them at night, so Wang didn't have to stay downstairs. Progress was still slow, so Wang distributed elixirs, a generous gesture to help them get started quickly. However, their spiritual root limitations clearly had no effective way to overcome them. Was this a natural spiritual root? Wang, helpless, explained for a long time before letting them practice on their own. He found a spot on the courtyard and began to meditate. Another day passed in silence. That evening, as Wang ascended the mountain, he saw Wang Ye and Wang Tao sparring nearby. Each branch's basic techniques differ, especially combat techniques. These techniques not only require restraint but also require agility and flexibility. Proper application can unleash power beyond one's own cultivation level. Wang Zimin and Wang Lin watched from the sidelines as Wang Ye faced off against Wang Tao. Although they had already infused a significant amount of spiritual energy into their bodies, they were both at the first level of key training. Wang Tao had also learned basic techniques, but his proficiency was clearly insufficient. He was no match for Wang Ye and was quickly defeated. Wang Ye, with a proud expression, sheathed her wooden sword. Seeing this, Wang recalled the recent appearances of Mu Lin sect disciples from the outer world and said to Wang Zimin and Wang Lin, "How about we have a sparring match?" Wang Zimin and Wang Lin exchanged glances and nodded. Although the clan leader has successfully reached the 5th level of key training, combat requires more than just realm, it also requires mastery of techniques, proficiency, and combat experience, Wang Zimin said, taking the lead. While Wang's predecessor had participated in battle, it clearly lacked experience. Wang Zimin and Wang Lin, while not at a high level of cultivation, had both survived the catastrophe. Besides their trickery, their combat experience was clearly not too shabby. Wang stepped forward. He proposed a duel, worried about this. Cultivation alone without combat experience was useless. With unpredictable turmoil brewing outside, they still had so much to do. Wooden sword in hand, Wang charged forward, his magic already gathering strength. As the sword came down, Wang Zimin smiled. It was clear that Wang's moves were riddled with flaws. With a simple dodge, the sword missed. Wang remained calm and swung the wooden sword. Wang Zimin reacted quickly, raising his hand to block. Using the force, Wang retreated, and 3 ice cones in his left hand rose up at breakneck speed, flying towards him. Wang Zimin swung his sword calmly, aiming precisely at the 3 ice cones and scattering them in the blink of an eye. Wang planted his foot on the ground, his flying sword already in flight, his hands forming spells. Wang Zimin remained standing. With a single thrust of his left hand, he deflected the flying sword with 2 fingers. Wang, unleashing his magic, naturally had no intention of controlling the flying sword, he was simply buying himself time. Suddenly, mist rose, surrounding Wang Zimin. Clan leader, your magic is quite proficient, but it's too chaotic. The simultaneous release of clouds, rain, and mist has already drained your spiritual energy, and it takes too long. You're trying to freeze me, trapping me. By the time I've finished using all 3 techniques, I could have killed you a dozen times. Wang Zimin's voice echoed, and Wang felt a sense of foreboding. Sure enough, Wang Zimin had reappeared behind Wang, unleashing his own magic. He was unable to discern Wang Zimin, who had already left the mist's reach, unnoticed. If I were your mortal enemy, I would have killed you the moment your flying sword struck, Wang Zimin said calmly, sheathing his sword. Wang withdrew his sword, having assumed he was at the same level as him, but he hadn't expected the gap in combat to be so great. Let's fight again, Wang said. Chapter 45, Discussion. Wang Zimin stepped back, naturally happy to play along. Extending 2 fingers, Wang didn't unleash a spell this time, instead enveloping the wooden sword with his spiritual energy. Wang Zimin was right. Using too many spells wastes both spiritual energy and time. Leaving too many gaps, even a fraction of a second before the opponent reacts could put him in danger. This time, Wang planned to use only his sword control technique, a close quarters engagement. The wooden sword emanated a pale blue aura, and Wang charged forward. Wang Zimin naturally unleashed his sword control technique as well, the wooden sword emitting a faint golden glow. With a clang, Wang swung his sword downwards. Wang Zimin raised his hand to block, the powerful concussion knocking Wang back, while Wang Zimin didn't retreat a single step. We're both at the 5th level of key training, and our spiritual power is similar, but with pure brute force, without any skill, you'll be striking me like stone, Wang Zimin continued his instruction. Was it a clever move? Wang had clearly seen the flying sword in Wang Zimin's hand sink slightly, and then he himself was repelled by a force that truly felt like striking a stone. Bang! Wang stepped on the ground, jumped into the air, and swung his sword, but he didn't use his full strength. Instead, he tried to find a position for his body. Wang Zimin still raised his hand to block. Wang used the force and stepped forward. The flying sword suddenly made a 360-degree turn and slashed at Wang Zimin from behind. Wang Zimin was still calm and gently blocked the flying sword to the side. It turned out that he didn't use his full strength to block. There was another clang. The moment the flying sword in Wang Zimin's hand touched Wang's flying sword, it was slightly lifted up. Wang subconsciously exerted force downwards, and Wang Zimin kicked out. Wang couldn't react in time. He was paying attention to the flying sword, but Wang Zimin's flying sword only made Wang's lower body unstable. After being kicked away, Wang turned several circles in the air and fell to one knee. It's okay, but you have to remember that if you want to attack others, you must first ensure that you have no flaws and gaps, so that others can counterattack, Wang Zimin said. Wang nodded and charged forward once more. After the fierce battle, Wang Zimin hadn't moved a single step, while Wang, having depleted most of his spiritual energy, was panting with exhaustion. A cultivator wouldn't normally behave this way, only when their spiritual energy had been expended excessively. I've learned a lot today, Wang said, sitting cross-legged to recover. It took a long time for him to stand up. Wang Zimin nodded. Practicing combat techniques is no easier than cultivating your strength. Clan leader, you're still young, and this isn't something talent can make up for. I want to see just how big the gap is between us, Wang said slowly. Wang Zimin smiled, finally moving his feet, and charging towards Wang De. No magic? No spiritual energy fluctuations? Wang De was a little confused. A direct strike from the sword struck Wang De, and Wang De raised his hand to block it, only to see a faint golden light suddenly emerge from Wang Zimin's flying sword, severing it with a single strike. Seeing the flying sword only 3 centimeters away from him, Wang De was truly astonished. They were both at the 5th level of key training. Both wielding wooden swords, yet his own wooden sword had snapped in two. Wang Zimin's mastery of the techniques, combined with his physical speed, strength, and dexterity, completely overwhelmed him. This was a seasoned veteran, even at the 5th level, but Wang De believed that with his current combat experience, even at the 7th level, he wouldn't necessarily be his match. You're useless. You lost in one move, a discordant voice echoed, and Wang De dismissed it as childish talk. After all, she was only a 7-year-old, Wang Ye. You say I'm useless? Then let's give it a try? Wang De stood up, a smile instantly spreading across his face. Tisk, you're bullying a kid like me? Go fight my master if you dare. Wang Ye retorted. Don't forget, I taught you your water magic, Wang De retorted feebly. That's because you're the only one who knows it. When I grow up, I'll definitely defeat you. Before Wang Ye could finish, Wang Zi quickly grabbed her. But Wang De wasn't angry. Instead, he was somewhat pleased. Wang Zimin's fighting prowess astounded him. He was worthy of escaping a catastrophe. He figured Wang Lin wouldn't be far behind, either. Wang De thought to himself, I need to practice more with them to gain more practical experience. As for Wang Ye, she'd always been like this. It wasn't out of arrogance, but rather a disdain for the weak, which was exactly what a cultivator needed. She had the urge to become stronger and the perseverance to do so. She wasn't the most talented of the group, but she was undoubtedly the fastest and most accomplished. A sleepless night, another long, slow night of cultivation. Wang Ye left early and returned late every day, her training unknown. Wang Zi, however, was nowhere to be seen. Wang De questioned Wang Ye that evening, only to learn that Wang Zi was on the verge of a breakthrough. This was good news. Every member's improvement in cultivation was good news. However, Wang De had always assumed that Wang Zimin would break through first, but he hadn't expected it to be Wang Zi. Wang Zimin and Wang Zi both have low-grade gold spiritual roots. If Wang Zi breaks through, she will be at the 7th level of key training, while Wang Zimin is still at the 5th level. It seems that although Wang Zi was bullied in the Bull family, she did not fall behind in her cultivation. A few days later, Wang Zi came out of the house. When she came out, she had already reached the 7th level of key training. Wang Ye was even more proud and showed off to her 2 friends for a while. The 2 little boys were shy and not so outspoken. They felt a little inferior for a while. Fortunately, Wang De comforted them and scolded Wang Ye a few words. After all, they were still young. For a character like Wang Ye, appropriate suppression could inspire her fighting spirit. For these 2 little boys, a little suppression would easily sow the seeds of inferiority and discouragement, which would be difficult for their cultivation. After yesterday's sparring, Wang De realized his lack of combat experience. While the clan was now stable and developing, combat was a top priority. He didn't want to raise a group of disciples with only cultivation but no combat experience. So Wang De went back to Wang Zimin. Wang Zimin understood the situation, but the disciples were still too young and their cultivation was too low, so they could only spar with each other. As for Wang De, Wang Zimin suggested that he first spar with him and Wang Lin. Training outside was too dangerous, and as the clan leader, he naturally couldn't risk his life. Wang De knew all this, but now that Mu Lin's disciples had just left the area, several powerful forces outside were about to attack. He wanted to strengthen himself so that, if not defeat them, he could at least escape, leaving behind a seed of hope. He didn't want to be left without a chance to save his life. For the time being, Wang De definitely didn't want to train outside. After all, without actual combat experience, going out would be a death sentence. So he frequently sought them out for sparring and to learn from them. Chapter 46, Wang Lin crushes Wang De. In the days that followed, Wang De, aside from his training time, would spar with Wang Zimin every evening. With each sparring session, Wang De's mastery of the techniques grew, and Wang Zimin meticulously taught him various combat methods and techniques. Wang De was deeply moved. Although he still couldn't defeat Wang Zimin, the battles between them forced Wang Zimin to exert his full strength to defeat him. However, Despite Wang Da's efforts and daily sparring sessions, he still couldn't defeat Wang Zimin. This left Wang Da immersed in the challenge, constantly challenging and failing. Wang Da could only conclude that Wang Zimin, after all, possessed over a decade of combat experience. He couldn't defeat him in a matter of days or even decades. Since Wang Zimin couldn't be defeated, Wang Da turned his attention to Wang Lin. Wang Lin had only recently reached the 5th level of key training and clearly lacked Wang Zimin's extensive combat experience. Furthermore, unlike Wang Zimin, he had previously been involved in external affairs within the clan, having spent years within the clan, thus lacking combat experience. Wang Lin, intrigued, naturally challenged Wang Da. However, after Wang Da clashed with Wang Lin, he discovered that Wang Lin was even more formidable than Wang Zimin. Despite training with Wang Zimin for so long, he was defeated after just 10 moves against Wang Lin, while Wang Lin seemed even more composed and composed. This somewhat overturned Wang Da's perceptions. Wang Lin looked overweight, and his attack skills weren't as good as Wang Zimin's, but he seemed more than twice as strong. Just to block a casual blow from Wang Lin would require all his strength. Bang! The blow landed, and Wang Da raised his hands, blocking it with his sword. Whoosh! The overwhelming force sent Wang Da flying backward. This force was even more terrifying than before. Wang Da estimated that even against Wang Zimin, he wouldn't have struggled so much. Wang Lin's power was truly terrifying. Considering that Wang Lin had escaped the ordeal at only the 4th level of key training, while Wang Zimin was at the 5th level, was Wang Lin's combat prowess superior to Wang Zimin's? Did he truly lack a natural talent for combat? Even Wang Lin couldn't defeat him, or was it that Wang Lin only looked weak, but was actually stronger than Wang Zimin? Unconvinced, Wang Da, eager to confirm his suspicions, proposed a sparring match between Wang Lin and Wang Zimin to see how his ideas panned out. However, Wang Lin quickly declined, knowing he was no match for Wang Zimin and unwilling to lose him. Wang Zimin kindly reminded Wang Da of his doubts, and Wang Da suddenly realized that Wang Lin's earth element spiritual energy completely countered Wang Da's water element spiritual energy. At the same level, unless Wang Da possessed a powerful magic weapon or a top-grade flying sword, or both were using wooden swords, there was no way Wang Da could defeat Wang Lin. It turned out that the 5 spiritual roots had a mutual generation and mutual restraint in combat, something Wang Da hadn't anticipated. Wang Lin was earth element, while he was water element. Earth element restrained water element, so it was no wonder he'd thought Wang Lin was more formidable than Wang Zimin. Knowing this, Wang Da finally felt relieved. Precisely because of these combat restraints, whether it's the various sects or families, when faced with external affairs, they generally have a coordinated group of disciples to act together. This facilitates action, and this is one of the ways in which a powerful sect is far superior to independent cultivators. After hearing Wang Zimin's explanation, Wang Da realized that he truly had much to learn. The 3 of them frequently sparred, a fact Wang Zi disliked. Besides teaching Wang Ya, she usually practiced alone. Wang Da wanted to see the difference between the strength of a 7th level key training cultivator and a 5th level key training cultivator, so he asked Wang Zi to spar with Wang Zimin. Wang Zi naturally complied, but now it was Wang Zimin's turn to be somewhat discouraged. This senior sister had just reached the 7th level of key training and was naturally aware of the gap in realms. If Wang Da were a novice in combat, Wang Zimin would have had the confidence to leapfrog the 2 realms and give it a try, but Wang Zi clearly wasn't. The 2 clashed, and within 2 rounds, Wang Zimin was defeated. Wang Da observed that Wang Zi's technique was clearly inferior to Wang Zimin's, but her sheer spiritual power was enough to defeat him. At the 7th level of key training, whether in terms of speed, strength, or spiritual power, a key training level 7 completely crushes even a veteran at the 5th level. Furthermore, Wang Zi also had combat experience, as Wang Da could tell at a glance. It seems that realm is fundamental, but combat experience is also indispensable, especially when further improvement becomes difficult at a high level, and the gap is not significant. That's when combat experience matters. One day, Wang Da returned to the foot of the mountain, conducting his usual teachings to the children, but his mind was still on the daily sparring. A long cry emanated from the house, and Wang Da saw a trace of spiritual energy emanating from it. Someone had spiritual energy entering their body? Wang Da hurried inside to investigate. It was Wang Ziazhen, who had successfully absorbed the first trace of spiritual energy, commonly known as spiritual energy infusion. With a dual element, miscellaneous spiritual root, He was considered one of the more diligent and intelligent of the children, so his spiritual energy infusion wasn't entirely surprising. According to his spiritual roots, he should have followed Wang Zimin or Wang Zi. Furthermore, Wang Zi, with his 7th level key training strength, could help suppress his dual element restraints if he followed Wang Ziazhen. However, Wang Ziazhen also imitated Wang Ya's behavior. When Wang Da asked him, he insisted on becoming his disciple. Wang Da didn't want to accept a disciple. After all, as the clan leader, he didn't have to lead his disciples personally. "Don't worry, big brother. I will work very hard and will never embarrass you." Seeing Wang Ziazhen's earnest eyes, Wang Da had to admit that he was quite fond of this somewhat humorous and hard-working Wang Ziazhen, so he agreed. Someone was needed to look after the area below, so Wang Da called Wang Zimin down and brought Wang Ziazhen up. They received a variety of cultivation resources, such as elixirs and wooden swords. Naturally, Wang Zimin would look after these things. Wang Ziazhen happily left after officially teaching him the next day. There were only 4 people left in the house, 3 children with single, mixed-grade spiritual roots, and the remaining one was Qin Yi. Seeing Wang Ziazhen's departure, the remaining 3 children felt inexplicably anxious, and at this moment, they couldn't help but create several clones to cultivate. Qin Yi sighed secretly. After all, he was already 14 years old, and there were many things on his mind. Don't be discouraged, and don't overthink things. Just do your own thing. Sooner or later, you will be able to enter the spiritual energy. Wang Da comforted him. But I've been up the mountain for so long, and I still haven't sensed any spiritual energy. I don't know when it will enter my body, Qin Yi lamented. Chapter 47 Spiritual Root Suppression. A few days ago, I heard Master Zimin say that even if I could infuse spiritual energy into my body, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to cultivate past a 5th level of key refining in my lifetime. Qin Yi mused, his head bowed. Don't listen to him. You have to understand that there are many other factors that limit cultivation besides age and talent. As long as you don't give up your faith, sooner or later, you will surpass him, Wang Da said, patting him on the shoulder. Qin Yi nodded. His mindset wasn't easily changed. After all, he wasn't a child of 7 or 8. Wang Da had recruited him into the mountains, firstly, hoping to increase his daily contribution with an additional person, and secondly, because he had his own system. He believed that if Qin Yi went up the mountain, he could help him achieve success. As Wang Da had said, even if he couldn't reach a very high level, it would at least be better than herding cattle in the village. That night, Qin Yi took the 3 children to practice, and Wang Da went up the mountain. The next morning, Wang Ziazhen was waiting for Wang Da to finish his training. Wang Lin went down the mountain to oversee their training, while Wang Da took Wang Ziazhen to an open space nearby. Wang Zi and Wang Zimin also arrived. Wang Ziazhen, possessing dual spiritual roots of equal strength, would be unable to cultivate his cultivation technique without someone to suppress his wood spiritual root, and would never again be able to cultivate. As Wang Zi, being at the highest level, naturally entrusted the task of suppressing the spiritual roots. All 3 of them wore solemn expressions, lacking experience. According to the family's custom, such inferior dual spiritual roots were generally not accepted into the mountain sect, left to fend for themselves in the mortal world. While they had accepted a few disciples with stronger spiritual roots, neither Wang Zi nor Wang Zimin had encountered them before, so they had no practical experience with spiritual root suppression. They only knew how to operate it. Generally speaking, the higher the level of the person attempting spiritual root suppression, the better the success rate, but there was still a chance of failure. With luck, their spiritual roots would be destroyed, but they could protect their foundation and become mortal. With less luck, the process could lead to their death. Wang Zi seemed extremely nervous. This was something she had to do no matter what, but she herself had never suppressed her spiritual roots, and she didn't want to see a child like Wang Ziazhen die. If you regret it now, I can send you down the mountain, back to the village, herding cattle and farming, living an ordinary life, Wang Zimin finally persuaded. Wang Ziazhen shook his head vigorously. I don't want to be a mortal forever. I don't want to be bullied. I want to fly like you, fly high. Wang Zi's heart seemed to be touched by these words, and her hands trembled slightly. Yes, of the 4, only Wang Zi came from the mortal world. The other 3 had parents who were cultivators. Wang Da was the 3rd son of the former patriarch, and Wang Zimin and Wang Lin's parents were both cultivators in the clan. While their status and realm were not high, They were all cultivators. She, on the other hand, was different. His parents were mortals, and she had experienced so much frustration and suffering. She saw a reflection of herself in Wang Xiaozhen. But unlike her, Wang Xiaozhen was determined, while she was timid, with the inferiority and timidity of coming from a mortal, village peasant family. Recalling the past, Wang Zi remembered the helpless little girl she'd been, trapped within the mountain gate, with no one to care for her, no relatives or friends. All they cared about was talent and realm, not her feelings. This had made her so timid now. She feared angering others, fearing accidents, fearing everything. She longed for peace, a solitary peace. She tried hard to follow the rules, everyone else's rules, simply wanting to live a better life. Over the decades, if she had possessed Wang Xiaozhen's determination, perhaps she could have achieved more. Wang Zi's memory washed over her, and she shook her head, coming to her senses. Killing was not enough, she'd killed many, but never had she felt as nervous as she did today. But facing a young man from such a family, at such a young age, made her uneasy. If she made a mistake, she'd probably live with the guilt for the rest of her life. This perhaps frightened her even more than killing herself. Wang Xiaozhen's words echoed in her mind. I don't want to be bullied. I want to fly high. Master Wang Zi, don't worry. Even if I die, I won't blame you, and I won't regret it. Wang Xiaozhen, noticing Wang Zi's nervousness, offered words of comfort. Wang Zi's thoughts returned, and she pondered for a long time, a grown-up like herself, yet she felt no better than a child. Don't worry, I won't let you die. Remember, strive hard, don't give in, fight fate, and maintain that determination within you. Don't be like me. Wang Zi's words were both encouragement to Wang Xiaozhen and self-mockery for her own timid life. Wang Di saw her feelings, as if Wang Xiaozhen had touched a chord. She could imagine how a little girl from the mortal world, without any relatives or friends, could survive in a family of 400 or 500. Setting the pill aside, Wang Di signaled they could begin. If he continued, he feared the two would grow increasingly nervous. Wang Zi swallowed a pill, a faint golden aura slowly emerging, and her hands approached Wang Xiaozhen's. Wang Xiaozhen felt a gentle spiritual energy slowly enveloping his entire body. Wang Zi had a gold-type spiritual root, and Wang Xiaozhen also needed to cultivate the gold type. This was a perfect match, and the success rate was also higher. Wang Di quickly stuffed 2 pills into Wang Xiaozhen's mouth. Close your eyes and feel the spiritual energy in your danshan. Wang Xiaozhen did as he was told, slowly closing his eyes. As soon as my spiritual energy enters your danshan, it will stimulate your gold spiritual root. Once activated, you will become a cultivator of the first level of key training. However, you also have wood spiritual roots within you. Once the gold spiritual root is activated, it will seek out the wood spiritual root, waiting for an opportunity to devour it and destroy it. Spiritual roots are innate and connected to the body, and the same is true for the wood spiritual root. If it is devoured, your body will become dysfunctional, leading to exhaustion and death. I will control your gold spiritual root and slow its devouring force. Your task is to protect your wood spiritual root, infusing it with spiritual energy to prevent it from being devoured by the gold spiritual root. This will continue until your wood spiritual root gently exits your danshan. Wang Zi spoke word by word. Wang Xiaozhen nodded, diligently sensing his danshan. Wang Di and Wang Zimin, standing outside, unaware of the situation inside, also seemed anxious. Time passed by minute. This seemed like an extremely long process, not quite what they had imagined. Chapter 48 Spiritual Root Suppression. A faint green aura began to emerge above Wang Xiaozhen's head. It was his own spiritual power, now fully protecting his wood spiritual root. His entire body was filled with gold spiritual power, the two streams distinct and separate. Suddenly, the green aura above Wang Xiaozhen's head became restless and agitated, slowly attacking the pale golden spiritual power that enveloped his entire body. What's going on? It seems suppressing spiritual roots shouldn't cause this, Wang Zimin asked anxiously. Wang Di also shook his head. Since Wang Xiaozhen was about to begin his cultivation, they had not only consulted the records but also consulted with the elders at the Liu family, hoping that Wang Xiaozhen could successfully suppress his spiritual root. But the current situation was clearly beyond their expectations. No one knew what had happened, seemingly only the two of them. Puff. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Wang Zi's spiritual power instantly drained from Wang Xiaozhen's body. What's going on? Wang asked hurriedly. Wang Zi wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. His wood spiritual root is starting to backfire. Backfire? Wang Zimin exclaimed in surprise. It's common knowledge that gold spiritual roots restrain wood spiritual roots. Logically, how could there be a backlash? Wang Zimin, evidently more experienced, asked. It all started as we know. As soon as his gold spiritual root absorbed spiritual energy, it sought out the wood spiritual root, waiting for an opportunity to devour it. He then used his own spiritual energy to protect it. I worked hard to suppress the gold spiritual root. Everything was originally going smoothly. As long as the gold spiritual root successfully absorbed it and entered the first level of key training, the wood spiritual root would naturally not be destroyed. But he seemed to be exerting too much force, and the wood spiritual root began to absorb spiritual energy crazily, surpassing the gold spiritual root, and began to devour the gold spiritual energy. I was originally controlling the gold spiritual root, so I was also attacked, and I vomited blood. Wang Zi explained the situation. Wang De looked at the light green spiritual energy slowly extending downward from his head and hurriedly called out to Wang Xiaozhen. Don't let the wood spiritual root devour the gold spiritual root. Otherwise, the gold spiritual root will disappear and you will die too. Wang Xiaozhen seemed to have heard Wang De's words. The rate at which he was consuming the pale green spiritual energy slowly slowed, but it continued to consume. It seems he can control both spiritual powers at once. At this rate, the wood spiritual power will devour all the gold spiritual roots, and he will die too, Wang Zimin said. There's nothing we can do now. If I continue to use my spiritual power, I'm afraid something will happen. He'll have to rely on himself for the rest, Wang Zi said. Wang De ignored them, looking at Wang Xiaozhen and speaking slowly. Remember, neither spiritual root can disappear. Simply suppress it to the point where its spiritual energy is invisible. Just like your other 3 spiritual roots, they all exist, but they're not inside your danshan, but outside it. Since both spiritual roots are of equal strength, they'll compete for control of your danshan. What you need to do is expel the wood or gold spiritual root from your danshan. This is suppression. Don't let the spiritual energy of one devour the other, or it will vanish. And you'll die of exhaustion. Wang Xiaozhen finally understood Wang De's advice, but he couldn't bring himself to control the 2 spiritual energies. This is the limitation of opposing spiritual energies. Both spiritual roots want to occupy the danshan, absorb external spiritual energy, and begin cultivation. If they are mutually beneficial, they can coexist happily in the danshan. A cultivator only needs to focus on the spiritual root that is beneficial. For such a cultivator, the beneficial spiritual root will actually become even stronger, surpassing its own inherent strength. If the 2 spiritual roots are neither mutually beneficial nor mutually exclusive, they will not devour each other. Instead, the cultivator can choose to gently expel one spiritual root and cultivate the other. While both can be cultivated together, this approach will significantly slow cultivation and offer no other benefits. At most, it will grant dual spiritual energy, making it less vulnerable to suppression in combat. However, expending significant time cultivating dual spiritual roots is clearly uneconomical. Wang Xiaozhen had already mobilized nearly all of his strength, the 2 spiritual energies intertwining within his body. He knew he couldn't kill one, so he had to expel it. However, if he controlled one, the other would become uncontrollable and devour him frantically. He longed to ask Wang De how to expel it. As if in tune with him, Wang De continued. To expel one spiritual root, you need to cultivate the other to the first level of key training, allowing it to occupy the danshan. The opposing spiritual root will then be expelled, effectively suppressing it. Wang De explained this information continuously. He knew it was all they knew, and he held nothing back. He knew this was a matter of life and death. Wang Xiaozhen understood. He needed to cultivate in this state, allowing the spiritual energy of a single spiritual root to occupy his entire danshan. But he couldn't do it right now. Not only had he only just begun to absorb spiritual energy, but to reach the first level of key refining, he would also need to absorb a significant amount of spiritual energy, a feat that clearly wouldn't take more than a day or 2. Originally, Wang Zi was present, and he had swallowed another elixir. Wang Zi would have helped him cultivate his gold spiritual root, which would have taken only half an hour to reach the first level. His only task was to protect the wood spiritual root until Wang Zi could absorb the spiritual energy from the gold spiritual root to reach the first level. But Wang Zi had withdrawn, clearly unable to assist him again. The rest was up to him. Crucially, He only had a mixed spiritual root. Cultivating a single spiritual root to the first level of key refining would take far too long. With a top-grade spiritual root, he could easily reach that level in 2 hours of cultivation. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Wang Zimin and Wang Zi felt hopeless for a moment. It was clearly too much for a 6-year-old to muster such perseverance. It took both the intention to control 2 spiritual roots, the concentration to absorb spiritual energy, and the effort to absorb it into 1 spiritual root until it filled his danshan. Clearly, it wasn't something a 6-year-old could accomplish. Wang De didn't give up. Given the situation, he could only help him increase the concentration of spiritual energy around him, reducing the time it took him to absorb it. His room had already been upgraded to level 49, boasting the richest spiritual energy, but he hadn't anticipated this situation. With Wang Zi around, it would obviously be much faster than a 49-level room. But now, alone, he could only use external tools. There was no way to get him to his room, so Wang De had to dismantle the small 5-element spirit gathering array in his room and move it to the open space. Even that wasn't enough, so Wang De spent another half an hour building a simple shed. After checking the system and confirming that it was a building, he upgraded all his contribution points to it. In total, there were over 80 contribution points. Wang De's contribution had originally been used to upgrade the spirit stone condenser, but now only a few remained. Fortunately, the spirit stone condenser required 100 contributions to upgrade to 1 level, and Wang De only had a little over 80 contributions in stock. He immediately tapped on the shed, raising it to over 40. Wang Zimin and the other 2 were clearly puzzled, but the spiritual energy within the shed had become much richer, and they were relieved. They were aware of the changes at the mountain gate, and now they could only pray that he could muster such perseverance and successfully suppress a series of spiritual roots. At the very least, he wouldn't die, even if he became immortal. Wang De had done his best, and the rest was up to him. He also regretted saving more contributions, or preparing everything to suppress the spiritual roots in his own room. But it was too late to regret now. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Cloud Spiritual Root. The 3 took turns watching over the shed, preventing any accidents. Even if one of their spiritual roots truly disappeared, they hoped to do their utmost to save their lives, though they knew that if one of their spiritual roots disappeared, death was inevitable. The night passed, and Wang Ye returned with Wen Tao and another child. Seeing the 3 people's anxiety, they said nothing and returned to their training. Wang Lin also came up from below and, having learned of the situation, was about to stay. Wang De told him to go back and rest, as he might need to watch over the 4 people below tomorrow. Early in the morning, Wang Ziazin's energy was still a mixture of gold and green. The 2 spiritual energies seemed to have reached a balance, and he was slowly absorbing spiritual energy. The night passed without incident, and Wang De felt much more at ease. He feared that absorbing the spiritual energy of the first level of key training wouldn't take long. Even with low-quality spiritual roots, in such a spiritually rich environment, a day and a night of absorption should be enough. Unexpectedly, another day passed, and Wang Ziazin was still as usual, with no unexpected problems. The 3 of them suddenly became anxious again. Could it be that the amount of spiritual energy he absorbed was so weak? He hadn't cultivated to the first level of key training in 2 days and 1 night? After all, he's unable to do it in 2 places. Don't be too anxious. Just keep absorbing spiritual energy. Wang Zi persuaded. Wang De nodded. As long as he kept absorbing spiritual energy, it would be fine. The most worrying thing was that he didn't have the mind to distract himself to absorb spiritual energy. This stalemate would end sooner or later. Another night passed slowly. Wang Ziazin was still the same as usual. There were no beads of sweat on his forehead. It was probably because his body was extremely dehydrated. After all, he was just a beginner cultivator. Wang Ziazin was still a mortal body. He persisted for 2 days and 2 nights. If he didn't reach the first level of key training, his body would probably be the first to collapse. Another day and night passed, and Wang Zi went forward to check. The potency of those 2 pills has been depleted. Now, his spiritual energy absorption has become very slow, and his body is beginning to undergo some changes. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for much longer. For 3 days and 3 nights, a 6-year-old child could display such perseverance. This act left a lasting impression on the three. If someone with such perseverance could survive this time, he would probably achieve great things in the future. It's a pity these two are just inferior items, otherwise. Wang Zimin sighed. Wang De remained silent, for he noticed that Wang Xiaozin's two spiritual powers were growing stronger. It wasn't just one, but both. Another half-day passed. Bang! The makeshift shed exploded in an instant. The three waved their hands to repel the flying wooden fragments. Looking in the middle, Wang Xiaozin had regained consciousness. His spiritual energy had been absorbed into his body, leaving the three confused. House destroyed. House destroyed, the system's voice echoed, forcing Wang to check. Okay, over 80 contribution points destroyed just like that. Wang Xiaozin, I'll remember you. After putting away the system, Wang De followed. Wang Xiaozin opened his eyes, then closed them again and fell into coma. Wang Zimin quickly took out the elixir and gave it to him, while Wang Zi used his spiritual power to check his physical condition. His body is not damaged, and there is an inexplicable spiritual power in his danshan. Inexplicable spiritual power? Wang De asked. While the three were curious, Wang Xiaozin woke up, his body still weak. I'm lucky I didn't die. Tell me quickly, what happened? Wang Zimin asked. Those two spiritual energies were fighting within me. I followed my elder brother's instructions, trying to control them and slowly absorb them. But I had no idea how to manage a spiritual root. I simply absorbed them into my danshan, and they kept spinning and spinning. I felt dizzy and almost died, but I didn't want to die, so I kept absorbing them. They kept spinning and spinning again. Only when the two spiritual energies stopped fighting did I relax, and then I passed out. You're really lucky, Wang decided. You're fine, but I lost over 80 contribution points, and that 5-element spirit gathering array was destroyed by him. But at least he was alive. Wang Zimin carried him to his room to rest. Congratulations on obtaining a disciple with a mutant spiritual root. Reward, a copy of the Cloud Elemental Technique. The sudden system notification beep left Wang a little confused. He hurried inside and opened the system. He opened the second-level interface for his family members. Wang De, the clan leader, was at the 5th level of key training. Wang Xiaozin was at the 1st level of key training. Wang Zimin was at the 5th level of key training. Wang Lin, 5th level of key training. A white light emanated from Wang Xiaozin's name. Wang De clicked on his name and immediately received a copy of the Sky Cloud Technique, a cloud-based technique. Mutated spiritual roots? Mutated spiritual roots? Mutated techniques? Cloud-based techniques? This was clearly beyond Wang De's comprehension. Wasn't it said that this world only had 5 types of spiritual roots? The 5 elements were mutually reinforcing and mutually exclusive, so how could there be mutated spiritual roots? Ordinary mutated spiritual roots were fine, but what was a cloud-based technique? Wang De was clearly baffled. Clan leader, Wang Zimin called out from outside at that moment. Wang De hurried out, and Wang Zimin hurriedly said, Wang Xiaozin, there's something strange about the spiritual energy within you. Clan leader, please go check it out. Wang De had just run into his room because of the system prompt, so Wang Zimin came to call him. In another room, Wang Zi saw Wang De enter and hurriedly spoke. He doesn't have gold or wood spiritual energy within him, but a white spiritual energy. Very strange. White spiritual energy, cloud? Wang De muttered to himself. Cloud? What does that mean? The two asked simultaneously. Wang De came back to his senses. Did you know there are mutant spiritual roots in this world? We know about mutant spiritual roots, but they are only reserved for geniuses. We in the Wang family have never heard of them, Wang Zi said. I'm completely unaware of them. Tell me about them, Wang De said. Mutated spiritual roots generally only appear in those with 3 or more spiritual roots, like Kenya below. However, creating mutant spiritual roots isn't easy. Generally, 3 or more spiritual roots of equal strength must be cultivated simultaneously, allowing them to blend and blend. However, the chance of this happening is extremely small, and there are various restrictions. It requires matching spiritual roots to occur. For example, fire, earth, and gold spiritual roots can produce mutant lightning attribute spiritual roots, but this only happens when one survives a minor thunder tribulation. Ordinary cultivation doesn't allow them to form, Wang Zi explained. Have you heard of cloud spiritual roots? Wang De asked. Chapter 50 Level 10 Spirit Stone Condenser. The two exchanged glances and shook their heads. I've been in the bull family for a long time, and I've never heard of such a spiritual root, Wang Zi said. Wang understood, perhaps having stumbled upon a treasure. He just wasn't sure if this cloud element spiritual root was any stronger. If it wasn't as strong as an ordinary 5-element spiritual root, what good would it be? At most, it would just keep him alive. So, is this mutant spiritual root stronger than an ordinary 5-element spiritual root? Wang asked. No, it's just that the attributes you cultivate are different, and there are more restraints. As for whether it's stronger or not, it depends on the individual. There's no saying that a mutant spiritual root is necessarily stronger than an ordinary 5-element spiritual root. Mutated spiritual roots often arise because cultivators have too many different spiritual roots, but they want to achieve a mutually beneficial effect, so some people experiment and develop mutant spiritual roots, Wang Zi explained. It didn't become any stronger, which was good enough. It just meant that Wang Zi could cultivate normally from then on. Is that so? Wang replied. Don't worry about him. I know what's going on. You can go back. I'll take care of the rest. After hearing Wang's words, the two naturally excused themselves. Wang stayed behind, and seeing that he was fine, he returned to his room to study the system. In the second-level interface for family members, Wang Ziazin's name remained unchanged. Like the others, this unlocked nothing. However, Wang suspected that Wang Ziazin's ability to mutate his spiritual roots was probably related to the increased comprehension of the system's 3 passive skills. Wang took out a cloud-type technique and examined it. It turned out that the 5 elements of this cloud-type technique were fire and water. He was still unsure how Wang Ziazin, with his dual metal and wood spiritual roots, could mutate into a cloud-type technique. The system offered no reasonable explanation, so Wang gave up on it. The next day, Wang opened the sky cloud art and gave it to Wang Ziazin to practice. As expected, white spiritual energy began to surge, and Wang Ziazin began to practice this cloud-type technique. Wang offered guidance. Initial practice was universal, regardless of the specific aspect. Cultivation was essentially the same. After 2 days of this practice, Wang Ziazin finally found his groove, and Wang began teaching him the 5 basic techniques. The first, naturally, was the most fundamental technique, the object control technique. Wang spent the entire morning explaining it, and thanks to his passive comprehension bonus, Wang Ziazin quickly grasped it. The rest was up to him to practice on his own. Wang then returned to his room to practice. A day later, when Wang found Wang Ziazin, his object control technique was reasonably good, but nothing remarkable. Furthermore, his cultivation level was consistent with his low-grade spiritual roots, absorbing spiritual energy slowly, nothing special. Wang observed him in every aspect, and the results were consistent, seemingly within the natural range of low-grade spiritual roots. Seeing no significant differences, Wang stopped monitoring him and let him practice on his own. After a few days, Wang Ziazin had mastered all 5 basic techniques. Wang then began teaching him slightly more complex techniques, such as sword control. However, Wang encountered a problem. This cloud element spiritual root didn't seem to have any basic techniques. Would that mean he could only learn these basic techniques? This was a rather difficult question. Besides cultivation, the foundation of a cultivator's practice lay in the techniques themselves. These techniques were fundamental to their cultivation. Each element had its own distinct techniques, each with its own purpose. Whether in combat or other areas, they were all related to one's own 5-element spiritual power. Since this spiritual root was a mutant, Wang approached Wang Zi again to inquire about its techniques. Wang Zi naturally explained this. These basic techniques were originally developed by the predecessors of cultivation, which is why they are so well developed today. Techniques for mutant spiritual roots were much fewer, and most were created independently by those who possessed them. Of course, since the mutated spiritual roots were derived from the 5 elements, they should be able to cultivate the same 5 elements magic as before the mutation. Wang Zi knew all this, but she herself didn't have mutated spiritual roots, so naturally, she didn't understand the details. Wang returned to ponder for a moment, then decided to try teaching the other elements magic. Since Wang Ziazin possessed both metal and wood spiritual roots, and the cloud spiritual root was derived from water and fire spiritual roots, Wang didn't know which element he could cultivate. He could only slowly explore. After all, None of them had even heard of the cloud spiritual root. The 4 of them possessed metal, earth, and water spiritual roots, so they were worried he could only cultivate wood or fire, which would be a problem. Wang left the house, and Wang Xiaozhen was practicing sword control nearby. It would likely take several days for him to master it. Wang then headed back down the mountain. One of the remaining disciples had also experienced spiritual energy influx today. Naturally, Wang wanted to go down and check on the child, but he wasn't particularly outstanding. He offered a few words of encouragement, and Wang Zimin accepted him as his disciple. After a few days, Wang Xiaozhen's sword-wielding skills became increasingly proficient. Wang summoned Wang Zi, hoping to test his ability to cultivate the 5 elements. After several attempts, they both discovered that the cloud-based spiritual energy wasn't suitable for cultivating his original metal-based magic, but rather for cultivating water-based magic. Wang then began teaching water-based magic, figuring that fire-based magic could also be cultivated. However, there were no fire-based cultivators in the clan. He simply gave him some manuals to read, hoping he could grasp them on his own. After all, mastering fire-based techniques was difficult without a master. During this time, Wang had spent almost all of his accumulated contribution points upgrading his spirit stone refiner. It had now reached level 10, a full 1,000 contribution points, a heartbreaking achievement for Wang. With this much contribution, he could upgrade his house to level 50 and witness the transformation it had undergone. Wang was quite satisfied with the results. They were pretty much what he'd hoped for, increasing the output and speed of spirit stone condensation. Previously, this instrument produced about 1 to 2 spirit stones per day, sometimes up to 3, even when operating continuously throughout the day. But now, after the upgrade, Wang could clearly feel the instrument's condensation rate increase 3 to 4-fold. He could now condense 4 to 5 spirit stones daily, occasionally even 6, though the amount of spirit spring water required increased. Condensing spirit stones from external spiritual energy was difficult, so Wang had previously used spirit spring water. Fortunately, before upgrading the spirit stone condenser, Wang upgraded the spirit spring, which now supplied the instrument with enough water. He consistently produced over 4 spirit stones per day, which meant he could produce at least 1,460 spirit stones a year, and sometimes even a few more each day, which definitely exceeded 1,460. He only spent 1,600 spirit stones on this thing, so it would pay for itself in just over a year, and the rest would be profit. However, I spent 1,000 contribution points, which is equivalent to 1,000 spirit stones. Overall, it is still cost-effective, but it will take time to get my money back. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.